The prayer this morning will be offered by the good gentleman representing Allegheny and Washington County.
Good morning, colleagues. Faith, courage, and prayer birthed our great nation and guided America through more than 200 years of wars, natural disasters, and national crisis. Prayer is a freedom granted to us by our Constitution and a God-given right to all humanity. The opportunity to pray is a privilege, an honor, and a sacred duty. With that being said, let us adopt an attitude of prayer. Father God, I pray you will direct the leaders of our nation in this time of crisis we find ourselves today. Grant them the wisdom and understanding to help them to respond quickly and effectively to the people of Ukraine. May divine directions, decisions be on their lips, and may they do what is right in your sight. May they follow your will to direct our nation in the paths of peace and safety. Unite all response agencies in an organized and harmonious fashion to bring quick and effective resolve to the demands of this crisis. Empower the United States citizens to do our part, financially, physically, emotionally, and spiritually, to support all who have been affected by this war. I pray that you will encourage and strengthen the nation of Ukraine. Surround them with your love and your mercy, bringing peace and comfort to all who have suffered in the result of this invasion. It is in your name I humbly pray. Amen.
Amen. Quorum call.
Madam Speaker.
Has everyone recorded their presence? If so, the clerk will take the call. There being 133 members present, the House is still in session. The clerk will read the journal from the previous day.
Annapolis, Maryland, March the 4th, 2022.
Recognizing the Deputy Majority Leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Good morning. So much be considered the reading of the journal.
So ordered. Petitions, memorials, and other papers. Message from the Senate. Consent calendar number 19. Senate bills introduced in the House. Clerk will read the first bill and committee assignment.
Senate Bill 1, Senator Bidle, Economic Matters.
Recognizing the Majority Leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I move that the reading of Senate Bill 1 be considered the reading of all the bills on the calendar.
Hearing no objections, the bills are read the first time and referred to the appropriate committee. Report of the Committee on Judiciary. Report number 8. Clerk will read the first bill.
House Bill 349, Small Claims, Examination and Aid of Enforcement, Prohibition on Arrest or Incarceration for Failure to Appear.
The question for the House is the adoption of the favorable report. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. The favorable report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill as to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered printed for third reading. Clerk will read next bill.
House Bill 576, Wills and Trust Instruments, Electronic Execution, favorable.
Question for the House is the adoption of the favorable report. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The favorable report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill as to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered printed for third reading. Clerk will read next bill.
House Bill 692, Carroll County State's Attorney, Restrictions in Practice, favorable.
Question for the House is the adoption of the favorable report. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. Favorable report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered, printed for third reading. Clerk will read the next bill.
House Bill 920, Correctional Services, Medical Parole, Life Imprisonment, favorable.
Question for the House is the adoption of the favorable report. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. Favorable report is adopted. Recognizing the gentleman from Frederick.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Good morning.
morning.
Would the floor leader rise just for a quick question on this?
Good morning.
Good morning, Delegate. I had a few questions. Would you mind or permit me to special order this to the next calendar for potential purposes of an amendment?
Sure.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Question for the House is to special order HB 920 to the appropriate time tomorrow. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The favorable report has been adopted. Clerk will read the next bill.
House Bill 1323, Victims of Sexual Abuse, Provision of Services, Technical Correction, favorable.
Question for the House is the adoption of the favorable report. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. Favorable report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill or to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered, printed for third reading. Report of the Committee on Judiciary, report number 9. Clerk will read the first bill.
House Bill 284, Criminal Procedure, Out-of-Court Statements, Child Victims, favor the amendments. Amendment number 1.
Recognizing the floor leader.
Good morning, Madam Speaker.
Good morning.
Please so much be considered the reading of the amendment.
So ordered.
Amendment number 1 is technical. Amendment number 2 is clarifying. Madam Speaker, please move the amendments.
Question for the House is the adoption of the amendments. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The amendments have been adopted. The question now is the adoption of the favorable report as amended. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The favorable report is adopted. Are there any additional amendments to the bill or to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered, printed for third reading. Clerk will read the next bill.
House Bill 296, Interim and Temporary Protective Orders, Electronic Filing and Video Conferencing Hearings, favor the amendments. Amendment number 1.
Recognizing the floor leader.
Please so much be considered the reading of the amendments.
So ordered.
Amendment number 1 is technical. Amendment number 2 strikes the bill and substitutes procedures for the electronic filing of a temporary protective order with the court from certain prevention or assistance programs at a hospital where the petitioner is receiving treatment or at another location approved by the court. Madam Speaker, please move the amendments.
Question for the House is the adoption of the amendments. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. Amendments have been adopted. The question now is adoption of the favorable report as amended. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. Favorable report is adopted. Are there any additional amendments to the bill or to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered, printed for third reading. Clerk, read next bill. Okay. Report of the Committee on Rules and Executive Nominations. Report number 6. Clerk will read the first bill.
House Bill 1473, Prince George's County School Board Districts Redistricting Plan, favorable. That was number 5. I'm not sure.
That again. Clerk will read the bill.
House Bill 1473, Prince George's County School Board Districts Redistricting Plan, favorable.
Question for the House is the adoption of the favorable report. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. Favorable report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered printed for third reading. Clerk will read the next bill.
House Joint Resolution 8, Solidarity with the Government and People of Ukraine, favorable.
Question for the House is the adoption of the favorable report. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. Favorable report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered printed for third reading. Report of the Committee on Rules and Executive Nominations. Report number 6. Clerk will read the first bill.
House Bill 1388, re-referred to Appropriations. House Bill 1389, re-referred to Health and Government Operations. House Bill 1399, re-referred to Ways and Means. House Bill 1412, re-referred to Health and Government Operations. House Bill 1430, re-referred to Judiciary. House Bill 1436, re-referred to Judiciary. House Bill 1441, re-referred to Ways and Means. House Bill 1456, re-referred to Judiciary. House Bill 1459, re-referred to Economic Matters. House Bill 1464, re-referred to Health and Government Operations. House Bill 1468, re-referred to Ways and Means. House Bill 1469, re-referred to Appropriations. House Bill 1470, re-referred to Environment and Transportation. House Bill 1471, re-referred to Health and Government Operations. House Bill 1472, re-referred to Ways and Means. House Bill 1474, re-referred to Judiciary. House Bill 1476, re-referred to Judiciary. House Bill 1477, re-referred to Ways and Means.
Quorum call.
Madam Speaker.
Clerk will take the call. There being 130 members present, the House is still in session. Calendar of third reading House Bills number 28. Clerk will read the first bill.
House Bill 31, Maryland Energy Administration Resiliency Hub Grant Program and Fund.
Is on third reading and final passage. Is there any debate? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker.
Has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. There being 95 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 31, having received the constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk will read the next bill.
House Bill 108, Public Utilities, Energy Efficiency and Conservation Programs, Energy Performance Targets, and Low-Income Housing.
Is on third reading and final passage. Is there any debate? Recognizing the minority leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Would the floor leader rise just for a clarification point going that way? Thank you, my
Yes,
friend.
good morning.
Good morning, Delegate. So I know the bill got some amendments, and I'm not sure. I'm working off of the fiscal note. It's the only fiscal note that was included or available to us. The fiscal note indicated that this program would result in about $220 million in additional DHCD expenditures by fiscal year 2027. Is that still operative in the bill?
Yes and no. So the first thing that I just want to point out is that the fiscal note writers actually said DHCD, the Department of Legislative Services cannot independently verify these costs at this time. And the reason I think they said that is that DHCD put a $91 million fiscal note on it last year, exact same bill, and this year there is more federal funds going towards this program. And so I would take with a grain of salt the fiscal note that you have in front of you, and I think that the Department of Legislative Services is taking it with a grain of salt. Having said that, all of it is special funds, and I would point you to a section of the bill which lists all of the federal funds that are available to be coordinated for this, and what the bill does is it directs DHCD to maximize access to those funds.
Right.
That is on page, hang on one second, that's on page 7 of the bill. And then there's funds that come from Empower towards this. So what this bill does is it makes the Empower distribution more equitable between higher income households and lower income households, which is managed by DHCD. So you could think that the fiscal note ultimately in year 3 and 4 is somewhere between 91 million and the fiscal note they have here, but all of those funds are special funds. So there'll be federal funds, which are increasing in the infrastructure bill, and Empower funds.
Well, I appreciate that perception, but in my reading of the fiscal note, I'm certainly not as familiar. It's obviously your bill, but the fiscal note says DHCD's costs are assumed to be paid for by Empower surcharge revenues on page 5. And then the paragraph below that, it says that DHCD's costs may be offset to the extent that the state is able to apply for and obtain federal funding to assist with implementation. However, it is unclear whether any such funding is available and or obtainable at this time. So I know we'd like to think, hey, the feds are just going to backfill this for us, but to the extent that they don't, it would be paid for through the Empower program, through Empower program surcharges?
So what we don't get from the feds, and the feds have already put billions more into weatherization in the infrastructure bill, so there's very good reason to believe that we will receive several million more a year. We're already receiving a couple million a year from weatherization assistance program. It's good reason to believe, we're nearly positive we're going to get several million more a year from the infrastructure bill. DHCD has received these other grants but has not maximized these other grants. This bill requires maximization and coordination. And then yes, the remainder of the funds would come from Empower. And what it will do to the Empower funds is make sure they're distributed equitably, because right now, Empower funds ensure that across the board we're improving energy efficiency, but that is not distributed equitably, so low-income households are not receiving their fair share of those funds. So yes, the remainder comes from Empower, making Empower more distributed more equitably.
Thank you for your clarification. I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Madam Speaker, on the bill, and I appreciate the intent of the bill sponsor, but I think at the end of the day, everyone who votes on the bill should be aware of what the nonpartisan analysts suggest in the fiscal note itself. So I'm just going to read it. It's not my words. Additional comments in a fiscal note any of you can pull up. The Empower surcharge is assessed on utility customers to pay for the program. Accordingly, all electricity customers, including the state, local governments, and small businesses, will ultimately pay for the additional expenditures incurred by DHCD under the bill when those costs are recovered by electric companies, here's key words, through an increase in electricity rates. The timing and amount of rate recovery is unknown. So effectively, we're hoping that the feds give us between $91 to $200 million a year over the next several years, every year, to pay for this program. And if they don't, your ratepayers will pay for the program. On that basis, Madam Speaker, I unfortunately must vote against the bill. Thank you.
Madam Speaker.
The Vice Chair of the Committee.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. All we are doing is taking a certain portion of the Empower program, which is already in place, and setting a standard for those in low-income and moderate-income households. That's it. We're not raising any rates. Nothing changes with Empower. Additionally, from the federal legislation, this bill allows us to capture more of that and bring it into Maryland to dedicate that to these same programs. That's all the bill is doing. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Is there any further debate? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker.
Has everyone recorded the vote? Does anyone care to change their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. There being 94. I have 94. There you go. 94 votes in the affirmative. House Bill 108, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk, read next bill.
House Bill 266, Private Passenger Motor Vehicle Liability Insurance, Enhanced Underinsured Motorist Coverage, Opt-out Option.
Is on third reading and final passage. Is there any debate? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker.
Has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. There being 96 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 266, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk, read next bill.
House Bill 324, Minority Participation in the Alcoholic Beverages Industry Study.
It's on third reading and final passage. Is there any debate? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker.
Has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. There being 130 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 324, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk will read the next bill.
House Bill 436, Motor Vehicle Insurance, Use of Credit History Rating Policy.
Is on third reading and final passage. Is there any debate? If not, clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker,
Has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. There being 93 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 436, having received the constitutional majority, is declared passed. Calendar of third reading, House Bills number 29. Clerk will read the first bill.
House Bill 637, Insurance, Title Insurance Producers Annual Review.
It's on third reading and final passage. Is there any debate? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker,
Has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. There being 134 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 637, having received the constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk will read the next bill.
House Bill 917, Business Regulation, Home Improvement Commission Award Limits.
Is on third reading and final passage. Is there any debate? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker,
Has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. There being 109 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 917, having received the constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk will read the next bill.
House Bill 924, Alcoholic Beverages, Class 4 Limited Winery Licenses, Extension.
It's on third reading and final passage. Is there any debate? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker,
Has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. There being 133 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 924, having received the constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk will read the next bill.
House Bill 962, Commercial Law of Maryland Personal Information Protection Act revisions.
It's on third reading and final passage. Is there any debate? Not, the clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker,
Has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. There being 95 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 962, having received the constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk will read the next bill.
House Bill 996, Corporations and Associations, Ratification of Defective Corporate Acts.
Is on third reading and final passage. Is there any debate? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker,
Has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. There being 134 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 996, having received the constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk will read the next bill.
House Bill 1253, Alcohol and Tobacco Commission clarifications.
Is on third reading and final passage. Is there any debate? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker,
Has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. There being 134 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 1253, having received the constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk will read the next bill. Excuse me, calendar third reading, House Bills number 30.
House Bill 71, Manufactured Homes, Sale of Manufactured Housing, Communities Manufactured Housing Modernization Act.
Is on third reading and final passage. Is there any debate? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker,
Has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. There being 118 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 71, having received the constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk will read the next bill.
House Bill 226, Public Schools Self-Contained Special Education Classroom Video Recording Pilot Program.
Is on third reading and final passage. Is there any debate? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker?
Madam Speaker,
Explaining your vote.
explaining my vote.
Gentlelady from Baltimore County.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for the opportunity to explain my vote. And I first want to thank the bill sponsor, who is a fierce advocate for individuals with disabilities. I also want to thank the committee for their work and consideration of this bill. I rise today as a special educator in support of my special education colleagues across the state, which have all dedicated their lives to serving students with disabilities. And while I have all the respect in the world for those that have advocated for HB 226, it's my belief that the precedent this bill sets weakens special education outcomes, which is the opposite of the bill's intent. In the hearing, the necessity of this bill was likened to the benefits of police body cameras, but there is a stark difference between police and educators. We are not armed with guns and pepper spray. We are armed with pencils. We are armed with books. We are armed with paper. We do not have arrest powers, and instead we use our role to help students realize their own power. But the part of this bill that I'm struggling with the most is that it signals to our special educators that we do not trust them. In a state where 500 of our 2,000 teacher vacancies are special educators, I ask, can we really afford to perpetuate that message? But I want to leave you with this. If we are really concerned about fixing special education outcomes in this state, as legislators, we must address our special educator shortage with intensity. It needs to be our #1 objective. Unfortunately, it's my view that this bill moves us backwards, and for those reasons, I've voted red today. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Madam Speaker, to explain my vote.
Explain your vote.
Thank you. Colleagues, I understand and appreciate and agree with the intent behind this bill and the heartfelt reasons with which it was brought to protect our children. I am red for 2 reasons. One, I believe this is not the right way to address the problem. And 2, I fear what it will lead to. Yes, this is a pilot, but when the pilot is over, there will be a push to make it permanent. And then there will be a push to put it in all special education classrooms. And then there will be a push to put it in all classrooms, and on and on. And I am not just creating some hypothetical out of whole cloth. First, we had red light cameras. Then we added mobile speed cameras, then bus cameras, then fixed speed cameras. Each year in my committee, we hear multiple bills to add more cameras, and not just more speed cameras, even though we hear lots of those. Bills to add cameras on different types of vehicles. Bills to add cameras on signs to make sure people are following the law. Bills to add more and more cameras to make sure drivers aren't texting. Each one of these has a good and important and heartfelt reason behind it. But if we are not careful, we will end up in a society where our every move is watched. And I believe that is not a society we want. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Madam Speaker. Chairwoman of the committee.
Thank you, Madam
Explain
Speaker.
your vote.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. To explain my proud green vote, in response to some of the comments that have been made, and those of you who served with me on judiciary know that I was dubbed Mama Bear by my colleagues because I fought fearlessly and tirelessly for our children. And my former chair is shaking his head, yes. Our teachers are not armed as police, but I do know, as the daughter of an educator who taught public school for over 30 some odd years, that they are armed with caring for and loving and protecting our children and molding their minds. How powerful is that? How powerful is that? Imagine having a child who cannot verbalize what has happened to them when they have come home from school. Imagine that your child has come home from school with bruises on their body, with hair pulled from their head, with scratches on their body, but cannot tell you what has happened to them while they were at school. One of the testimonies that we heard, the gentleman said, quote, "My son came home with a bruise over 4 inches in diameter in the center of his back. Significant enough someone should have been aware of an incident as it would have been a significant blunt injury. To this day, I have no idea what happened." He testifies, he suffers severe anxiety because he kept sending his kid back to school, but he did not know what happened, and his kid could not.
Time is up. 2 minutes. Each gets 2 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I proudly vote yes to protect our children on this bill.
Any
Madam
subcommittee chair.
Thank you. It's important that you understand the hard work that the subcommittee did on this bill and why I'm voting yes for it. I understand completely the concerns of those who feel like this is a walk toward cameras in all classrooms. I will say that we are dealing with a specific and very needy population in this bill. This bill will be designed both to protect those students, but also protect teachers. That a student comes home with an injury, they can be exonerated from having been responsible, if indeed it was an accident. So this is a good place for us to start. It's probably a good place for us to stop as well. Once we get this pilot done, we may do it in more classrooms of this type. But we have no intent of extending this further, and that's why I'm comfortable voting yes at this time. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Okay. Any further debate? If not, the clerk will call the roll. There being 128 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 226, having received the constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk, read the next bill.
House Bill 369, marriage records name change.
Is on third reading and final passage. Is there any debate? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker.
Has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. There being 106 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 369, having received the constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk, read the next bill.
House Bill 542, State Retirement and Pension System, Use of Minority and Woman-Owned Business Enterprises, Diversity Among Asset Managers Act of 2022.
Is on third reading and final passage. Is there any debate? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker.
Has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. There being 108 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 542, having received the constitutional majority, is declared passed. Calendar of third reading, House Bills number 31. Clerk will read the first bill.
House Bill 18, Maryland Paint Stewardship.
Is on third reading and final passage. Is there any debate? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker.
Has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. There being 93 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 18, having received the constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk, read the next bill.
House Bill 428, Election Law, Foreign Manufacture of Election Systems, Notification and Termination of Contract.
Is on third reading and final passage. Is there any debate? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker.
Has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. There being 136 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 428, having received the constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk will read the next bill.
House Bill 495, Education, Student Organized Peaceful Demonstration, Student Discipline and Policy.
Is on third reading and final passage. Is there any debate? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker.
Has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. There being 96 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 495, having received the constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk will read the next bill.
House Bill 713, Vehicle Laws, Horse Riding, Helmet Requirement for Minors.
Madam Speaker.
Recognizing the gentleman from Frederick.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Yeah, I voted yes for this in committee, but then we heard debate yesterday about a really common sense amendment that was offered to say if there's a fair or something that with people on their pony rides, that they wouldn't have to wear the helmets. I mean, this is like the Lice Act of 2022, sharing helmets. I mean, that was a common sense amendment, and I supported the concept of this bill, but I really wish we'd accepted that amendment. So because of those reasons, I'm voting no. Thank you.
Is there any further debate? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker.
Has everyone recorded the vote? Does anyone care to change your vote? Not, the clerk will take the call. There being 100 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 713, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk will read the next bill.
House Bill 740, State Retirement and Pension System, Investment Climate Risk, Fiduciary Duties.
It's on third reading and final passage. Is there any debate?
Madam Speaker.
Recognizing the gentleman from Carolina.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I understand why we're passing this bill. We want to get to net zero. We want to reduce our carbon footprint. And I think most of us here, to varying degrees, we want to leave this planet much better than when we came. The difference of opinion is we have different goals of where we want to go, and the difference of opinion is, to what extent are we willing to make sacrifices? So I'm not going to argue the merits of this bill because we see a lot of these come through the General Assembly. What I will argue, though, is the timing of this bill and the messaging that we're going to be sending out. And that's really what it comes down to. We're going to pass a bill very soon by the same bill sponsor that I think we're all going to vote for. It's a great messaging bill. Even though we're not in a military conflict with a major superpower right now, we are still at war with them. And we're doing, both at the federal and the state level, we're doing great things to choke Russia. The problem is the consequences that come from that. In Europe, they canceled the Nord Stream 2 pipeline, which is a great thing to do, obviously. The problem is that in Europe, and these are our allies, these are our friends, 45% of their gas comes from Russia, 25% of their oil comes from Russia. Where's that going to leave them? That's going to leave them in a really bad situation when it comes to where they're getting their energy. They're our allies. They're on our team. And to a much lesser extent, we're going to be feeling the impact of this oil embargo that we have with Russia right now, too. So I get what we're saying. And to a very small extent, if we pass this bill, it's not going to make a big difference in our footprint, but it will make a difference in our messaging. Do we want to put a chokehold on our domestic oil and gas production right now? Do we want to do that? Especially when we're paying more than almost $5 a gallon in gas. And so that's what I'm going to argue. If we can just hold off for another year, we can sit and not message this at all. I think that's the right thing to do right now. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Madam Speaker.
Floor leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I just rise to just give some clarity to the body about what this bill actually does, because I'm concerned that there are fears that are not related to the actual text of the bill. This bill is the work product of the Joint Committee on Pensions. It is not simply a bill that was introduced by the delegate. This was something that was worked on in a bipartisan fashion with the full cooperation of the state retirement and pension system. They did not oppose this bill. In fact, they gave a letter of information explaining how this only undergirds some of their current processes of considering climate impacts to the system's assets. This bill does not require divestment, nor does it prohibit divestment. It only requires that a fiduciary of the system consider climate and the risk to the system's assets based on climate. So I think what's really important about this is that we do have other states that are making divestment statements through their legislature. Specifically, in California, there was a bill that was requiring divestment from fossil fuels that the California Teachers Union opposed because their pensions are wrapped up in this, and they want the fiduciary to be making decisions based on their expertise, not political whims. So this is actually not a radical measure, it's a responsible measure. We are not politically making decisions for the pensions managers. We're only giving them, we're only requiring consideration of the reality that climate change poses to the assets we have. So for this reason, I will proudly be supporting House Bill 740.
Madam Speaker.
Minority Leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I oppose this bill really for two reasons, and I appreciate what my colleague from Baltimore City just said, that we're not requiring the divestment of anything, but I think that we're virtue signaling to the people who make these decisions that we'd like for them to get out of the fossil fuel investment industry. I can only read from the fiscal note. I am constrained, as each other 140 of us are, to rely upon a neutral analysis that is done by the members of the Department of Legislative Services. Don't serve on the committee. I didn't hear the particular testimony. I certainly appreciate the viewpoints of those who did, but I am constrained in the legislative record as to what that analysis is. And in the legislative record of this bill, the fiscal note suggests that under current law, consistent with its fiduciary duties, the SRPS, meaning the pension board, must include policies in the investment policy manual regarding risk management, including climate risk, in the investment of system assets. It also says, and this is something I think many of us probably didn't need to read the fiscal note to understand what the legal definition of what a fiduciary must or must not do. A fiduciary, the investment manager, must discharge his or her duties solely in the interest of the participants, not in the interests of the participants' great-grandchildren, whose policies may or may not be affected. We may not like that. And we can make environmental policies in different ways. We can restrain, we can restrict, we can use the RPS, we can do different things. But what we're doing is we're taking the money that our retirees are relying upon, they're relying upon the pension fund to grow and grow to keep paying for them, for their golden years, and we're saying, I don't know, let's not make that decision solely on the basis of the value of the investment, the finances. Let's interject some environmental policy, let's interject some social policy into all of that. I'll leave you with that, with this one thing about it. The Energy Select Sector Spyder ETF, which tracks oil and gas companies, is up nearly 40% in 2022, compared to an 11% decline for the benchmark S&P 500 index, with energy being the only S&P 500 sector still in positive territory this year. If I was relying upon a pension advisor to take my money and make money to pay for my retirement that I might use to help my grandkids, my kids, pay for a second home, keep me off of food stamps at some point in time, I sure as heck would want them to be putting it where the money's going to appreciate the most, not hampering them to say, well, maybe you should take climate change into account, and maybe if ExxonMobil keeps drilling for oil 50 years from now, 100 years from now, longer, who knows, things will be worse. Maybe they will, maybe they won't. But that's not going to matter to that person who's relying on those financial returns this year, next year, 5 years from now, 10 years from now. This is the wrong way to go about this. And I'll close only by saying this in support of my friend from Caroline County. We need domestic, North American at worst, production of energy. I don't stand in the way of wind, solar, biomass, natural gas, nuclear, coal, oil. As long as the policy is rational and can be delivered to the ratepayer, to the user at a reasonable cost in a capitalistic manner, all of the above. Because if we stop doing that, if we virtue signal what we want, do you think Russia's divesting from oil and coal in our lifetimes? Do you think Saudi Arabia is? Do you think China is going to stop digging for the rare earth minerals that we need to fuel all the lithium batteries and all of the things that we need to convert to a fully alternative energy economy? You ever looked into what rare earth mining does to the environment? Do you think countries in Africa that do this, that use little children to go and dig out the rare earth minerals that we need for our batteries and our cell phones, do you think they're going to stop because we say, hey, We're gonna pass these kind of bills? They're not gonna stop. That's foolish. This isn't a terrible bill. I appreciate the intent of it. The state pension system wants to signal that we're gonna look at these things more holistically. But that's not the purpose of our retirees' money. It's to make money. That is the job of an investment manager, is to make money for the program participants, full stop. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Recognizing the bill sponsor.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I thank the floor leader for her work and eloquent discussion on this bill. I just want to make clear, as the House Chair of the Joint Pension Committee, that this is about the fiscal side. This is about securing our retirees' assets. In fact, the retired school personnel who are retired right now wrote in support of this legislation. Climate change represents a systemic economic threat, right, that will adversely affect our pension fund. And in fact, we know with over a decade of data that the S&P 500's fossil fuel free total return index has consistently outperformed the S&P 500 overall, over 10 years. This is not about a snapshot. That's not what our pension fund is about. This is about long-term returns. And in fact, I appreciate my colleagues' comments about being good allies to Europe. I was driving to Annapolis today. They reported that European leaders are now convening to discuss how they can rapidly wean themselves off Russian oil, because they are so concerned. This is about not just that climate risk is investment risk, but also how can we move away from being dependent on oil. And this bill doesn't just say, let's make sure that we recognize that climate risk is divestment risk, but also recognize opportunities, investment opportunities in emerging technologies, and establishing policies to report on these so that we can take advantage of these new technologies and support and encourage their growth. So this is an incredibly responsible, forward-looking, and good fiscally responsible bill for our current retirees, future retirees, and for the climate. Thank you.
Madam Speaker.
Gentlelady from Baltimore County.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I want to thank the minority leader for really explaining the fiscal side of it and how many of us who are going to vote against this feel. But for the record, I would just like to insert in the public record here that, this bill says prioritize asset class specific matrices. And as they're looking at asset classes and investments, I want in the record it to be known that a typical EV battery weighs 1,000 pounds. It's about the size of a travel trunk. It contains 25 pounds of lithium, 60 pounds of nickel, 44 pounds of manganese, 30 pounds of cobalt, 200 pounds of copper, and 400 pounds of aluminum, steel, plastic. There are over 6,000 individual lithium-ion cells inside. These batteries, 68% use cobalt. 68% of the world's cobalt, a significant part of this battery, comes from the Congo. Their mines have no pollution controls, and they employ children. They employ children who die from handling this toxic material. Should we factor these diseased kids as part of the cost of driving an electric car? Absolutely. Should we factor that in investments? Absolutely. If we're going to look at climate change, let's look at the other side of it. California is building the largest battery in the world near San Francisco, and they intend to power it from solar panels and windmills. They claim this will be ultimate green, but it's not. It's creating an environmental disaster. The main problem with solar arrays is the chemicals needed to process silicate into the silicon in the panels. It uses hydrochloric acid, sulfuric acid, nitric acid, hydrogen fluoride, and many other toxic chemicals. And these panels cannot be recycled, as my good friend from Southern Maryland mentioned. So there are many, many more environmental problems with electric and EV vehicles and batteries. And for the record, I want to make sure that the state is not investing in companies that do business with mines that are killing children in Congo. Thank you.
Madam Speaker.
Gentleman from Culver.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I don't like to brag, but I like to go to expensive places. This morning, I went to a gas station. That was said by Senator John Kennedy of Louisiana recently. And then yet we see bills like this, which are completely and utterly tone deaf to the situation that the average Marylander has to deal with every day. I rise on this bill in particular because my good friend to my left, the gentleman also from Calvert and St. Mary's County, represent a county, which is Calvert, that has at the southern tip of it Cove Point. Cove Point, which was Dominion Cove Point, is a liquefaction natural gas export plant in Calvert County. That plant was actually built in large part by India and Japan. And of course, Dominion has their pipeline that goes there. Interestingly enough, that plant is saving the day for Europe. There are 7 plants like the one in Calvert County. 7 across the United States. Calvert is one of them, Cove Point. And they are saving the day in Europe by keeping people warm, creating electricity in Europe from the natural gas that is exported from, among other places, Cove Point in Calvert County. I mentioned my good friend to my left, the gentleman from Calvert County and St. Mary's County. He lives right near there at Dominion Cove Point. At the time that Dominion Cove Point came to Calvert County and asked for permission to retrofit the plant from an import plant to an export plant, my good friend to my left literally put his entire reputation on the line to make sure that this facility was built because it was saving the day for India and for Japan. Today, he's more prescient than ever because today the plant is saving the day for Europe. And at the time that he proposed this plant, Madam Speaker, which is related directly to this bill, the teachers union opposed the plant. Why they opined on this, I have no idea. Then no sooner did the plant get approved than the teachers union came back and said, now we want all the money that the plant pays in taxes. Unbelievable. And they worked hard to unelect my good friend as the Calvert County Commissioner, and they succeeded. This gentleman single-handedly is helping to save the day in Europe. Unlike this bill, which is completely and utterly tone deaf and doesn't even recognize the fact that the new company that owns Dominion Cove Point, the company that bought it, is Berkshire Hathaway, which I'm sure the woke on, that love this kind of stuff here, the wokeness of you can't invest now in Berkshire Hathaway because God forbid. Warren Buffett can't be right. He bought Dominion Cove Point, a liquefaction natural gas export company located in Calvert County, Maryland. It's unbelievable. It's tone deaf. Quite frankly, I cannot imagine why anyone would think this is a good idea. In economic matters, when we have bills that are like this, bills to cancel propane and cancel natural gas and cancel oil, we just ask one really simple question, the Republican caucus does. After it's canceled, what happens next? And we get this, well, we're going to power the economy by wind and solar. That's how it's going to happen. And guess what? Germany tried it. 20 years ago, Germany put these same policies in place, and now they're dependent upon Russia. The policies were wind and solar, the same policies you want. And they failed. And this man is responsible for, in part, saving Europe. He is, single-handedly, lost his seat over it, put his reputation on it. And here we are. Talk about folks that don't read history, that don't seem to understand it, tone deaf, ideological, climate zombies. Yes, Madam Speaker, I got to say it the way it is. There's no way I can support a bill like this, because you'd have to be blind from current events to vote for it. And that's why I'm voting against it. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Is there any further debate?
Madam
Chairman
Speaker.
of the committee.
Well, of a different committee.
Different committee.
You know, I actually talked about this very issue with one of my favorite Republicans in the whole wide world. Who? My stockbroker. So I asked him the question a year ago. I'm a little concerned about my portfolio because over the next 20 years, more and more people are going to start driving electric cars as they get cheaper. And does anybody take that into account when making investment decisions? And he said, yeah, there are people smarter than you and me who look at that issue on a daily basis in Wall Street. They understand that over the long haul, over the next 10, 15, 25 years, that the use of these petroleum products is going to decline. And they are already slowly backing away from it. Not abruptly, not precipitously, but they are taking that into account when they make their long-term investing decisions. I am an environmentalist, it's true, but that's not the reason I'm voting for this bill. I'm looking at this more from the perspective of what the rates of return on all of these fuel sources is going to be over the next 20, 25, 30 years. I think that this bill simply directs our pension funds to do what Wall Street analysts are already currently doing, and that is to take into account not climate risk from the perspective of the climate, but climate risk from the perspective of investment. And that's why I'm voting for this bill.
Is there any further debate? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker?
Has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change your vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. There being 94 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 740, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed.
Madam Speaker.
Recognizing the gentlelady from Baltimore County.
Thank you so much. I'd like to change my vote on House Bill 71 to no.
Calendar of third reading House Bills number 32. Clerk will read the bill.
House Bill 425, Public Safety, Untraceable Firearms.
It's on third reading and final passage. Is there any debate?
Madam Speaker.
Recognizing the minority whip.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. This ghost gun bill is very scary to me. I'm going to be perfectly frank about that, but once again, what we're doing here, the Maryland General Assembly is going to be criminalizing an inanimate object instead of behavior. Instead of going after the root cause of gun violence, criminals, we're going to potentially punish thousands of law-abiding folks who purchase kits or blocks of plastic or metal and who fashion a gun out of that or just have a receiver for that matter. Here's a rhetorical question. Wouldn't it make more sense to punish criminals? Here's a novel idea. How about we felonize thefts of guns. And we heard the other day in debate on second reader on this that there were about 16,000 guns that were stolen in 2016 and 2017. And I would submit to you that folks aren't stealing these so that they can go collect for UNICEF. But speaking of punishment, at a time when we're continuously hearing about the need to reduce maximum penalties in my committee, with this bill, when it comes to guns, we're going to go the other way. 3 years and/or a $10,000 fine. What type of mental gymnastics do you have to go through to reduce maximum penalties for a host of crimes except gun ownership? There's also, from my perspective at least, a very significant legal problem with this bill. Aside from the fact that it's probably violative of the Second Amendment, there's another problem. Ghost gun ownership and possession will essentially be a strict liability offense. In other words, there's no scienter requirement, there's no mens rea requirement. And the highest court in this state recently opined in Lawrence versus State just last year. It wasn't that long ago. It's a 2021 case. That strict liability gun laws are probably violative of the Due Process Clause. And yet we're doubling down. So there are a host of constitutional concerns that I have, Madam Speaker. I'll be voting no.
Gentleman from Talbot.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Speaker. I'm rising in opposition to this legislation. You know, there were some comments a couple days ago about confusion over a debate, and I've been on the phone talking with FFLs about our debate the other day, and the discussion about this concept of the state creating a program where we're going to have citizens serialize firearms. I can't get a single licensed, respected person with an FFL to come up with a rational way that this would play out. It's just, it makes no sense. We're debating this legislation today, and we can stand up and say, oh, it's going to work perfectly, and this is how you do this, and this group has said this will work. I can tell you it ain't going to work the way it's drafted. And it's very problematic in that, you know, we're pushing this through. Our job here is to protect. Our job here is not to create, it's to protect everyone's civil rights. We're supposed to be defending our citizens' rights. The Second Amendment is a fundamental right. And I realize that there are different opinions about gun ownership. But I can tell you, we've got many police officers, firefighters, doctors, teachers, coaches, moms, dads, that build their own gun or take their gun apart. Passing this not only threatens their civil right, but it sends the message, an incorrect message, that we're making our community safer. So people get focused on this concept of building guns, and meanwhile, the crisis rages on. And it's unfortunate that we're here today. I urge the body to vote no, and thank you.
Gentleman from Baltimore County.
I just want to speak briefly why I'm against this bill. And my good friend from the Eastern Shore, if I remember correctly, it just came to me now. He had a bill that or an amendment to this bill that I actually believe would make a difference in getting violent criminals off the street. He had a bill that basically put more resources towards convicting criminals in Baltimore City. I don't speak right now to try to knock Baltimore City, but I want to mention, this has hit home very close to me, when I lost a good friend a couple of weeks ago, shot and murdered in Baltimore City. I lost a family friend, shot and murdered in the city. And a Calvert Hall brother who was shot and murdered in the city just a few years back. I think this bill, as was already mentioned, will do more to harm law-abiding citizens when we had an amendment to a bill, and I believe it was introduced in the past, that would do more to help. And this is to help all of Maryland, this amendment that was not accepted the other day for whatever reason. If this bill did more, I would be happy to support it. I think it does very little. I think if anything, it jeopardizes law-abiding citizens who have been doing this for many, many years, as the minority whip said, and for those reasons, I can't support this. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Madam Speaker.
The gentleman from, where are you from? Wycomico?
Eastern Shore, Wycomico,
Eastern Shore will do, yeah.
Ocean City, Worcester. Thank you again, Madam Speaker. I just want to remind the body of our last discussion, and what I saw was a very flawed process. We offered several amendments, one which I presented, which I thought was very simple. And there was no movement on this. There was no working together on this bill. We heard debate, maybe the opinion of the floor leader as to the process, and heard the opinion of others as to the process were very different. And yet we weren't willing to work together on this. Our friends in the Senate, they came up with a bill that was palatable, where I believe the vote was pretty unanimous, except for maybe one person. And I just feel like as a body we could do so much better. And for that reason, I cannot support this bill. And I ask that we reflect on the discussion we had and maybe come together and make a product that we can see a little more camaraderie on. So for that reason, I'll be voting against the bill. Thank you.
Madam Speaker.
Gentleman from Anne Arundel.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I actually hadn't planned on speaking on this bill because I think we spoke enough during the on second reader, but I also want to add to what's already been mentioned here on the floor, and I think it's a shame that we do things for purely political reasons, and we forget to focus on the real problem and the real issue. This bill still has a lot of problems, and we had the opportunity to send it back to committee, that can come back and we can really focus on the real problem. Unfortunately, it was rejected, and I think we missed an opportunity to focus on the real problem while we can pass a good product that really makes a difference for the safety and security of our citizens. And for that reason, I cannot vote for a bill that does absolutely nothing to make our citizens safer and it doesn't go after our criminals.
The clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker.
Has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. There being 94 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 425 has received a constitutional majority, is declared passed.
Madam Speaker.
Gentleman from Culver.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I just wanted to see if I could have a point of personal privilege respectfully. Respectfully, Madam Speaker, we have two bills that are coming up before we bring them up, and they're very important to everybody here, and I know that. And I just respectfully ask, Madam Speaker, that we seriously consider removing the mandate for masks, because I think that our constituents want to see us talking, and I don't blame them. The Senate has removed the mask mandate, the Maryland Senate. The CDC has ended the mandate. Even Nancy Pelosi has ended the mandate. And I think it's reasonable as a compromise that when someone stands, that we can at least have that person remove their mask. Because it's very difficult to speak in these and to breathe in these, and most importantly, everyone else has lifted this mandate. And so, Madam Speaker, I respectfully request this. It's very important to us, and it's very important that we no longer wear these obedience masks when we're debating in a free speech environment. Thank you.
Calendar of third reading House bills, number 33. The clerk will read the first bill.
House Bill 937, Abortion Care Access Act.
Recognizing the majority whip.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The gentleman from Culver County said it right. We're going to be debating two very, very serious bills. Both of these bills are emotional, important. So we just ask that you be respectful as we go through these next two bills, and be respectful of each other's opinions, and be courteous as to what you may hear, and you have a vote at the end of the calendar and vote accordingly. But we want you to certainly be considerate of your members throughout this process. Also, please refrain, because it's so sensitive and emotional to individuals, please refrain from unnecessary claps, outbursts, and cheering. So we simply ask that you keep this in mind and make sure that we go through this process in a very professional and caring manner. With that, Madam Speaker, thank you.
Madam Speaker, on the bill.
Gentleman from St. Mary's.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Permission to remove my mask?
No.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Just to set the tone here, because I know there's a lot of people watching, because I'm getting text messages. They're asking always, why you're in masks? There's two state troopers.
The gentleman
here.
have a going to speak on
I have
the
a
bill?
comment on the bill. Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am. I guess I'll start this off by, it's interesting we have some freedom of choice bills here. So much for my body, my choice. This is the first time in nearly 30 years that an abortion bill has made it to the floor of the House of Delegates. Now, when we conducted the hearing on these bills, we did both of them at the same time, so I'm just going to go ahead and speak at both of them at the same time. First, the bill that's on the floor right now, House Bill 937. What this bill does is raise insurance rates on everyone by mandating health insurances cover other people's abortions. Then it expands the qualifications of a person that can actually perform the abortion. Open up the pages. Qualified providers means a physician, a nurse practitioner, a nurse midwife, a licensed certified midwife, a physician assistant. And then the bill mandates $3.5 million in taxpayer money to train those qualified people. I can't tell you how much I disagree with that. The next bill, HB 1171, enshrines and...
Can we just stick on the bill that's on, and then if you want to comment when the other bill comes up, please.
You want me to speak twice? I mean, I can.
If you want to speak about the other bill, speak about the other bill when it comes up.
Okay, we can handle it that way. I was just, Madam Speaker, with all due respect, we handled it this way in committee. I thought it would be easier if I
just
spelled.
asked you, this is not committee.
Gotcha. Okay, on this bill. Well, I disagree with this bill. I mean, I'm really disappointed at some of the amendments that struck down when we offered them on second reader, including life. There was an amendment by my good friend back there in Frederick County that required if there was a botched abortion, that adequate medical care would be provided to the baby. And that was voted down. Also, what was voted down was an amendment for late-term abortion. Now, I long for the days under Bill Clinton, Democrat position was abortion should be safe, legal, and rare. And now this bill expands it to anyone, any place, any time, and at taxpayer expense. And I disagree with that. I think a lot of people disagree with that. But I want to understand the gravity of the votes that are just about to happen here. Because a baby at 24 weeks is a viable baby. It would be born alive if the abortion didn't take place. It is not a group of cells. And often we deal with this with some euphemisms like reproduction freedom. Well, it's not a group of cells, and it shouldn't be treated like a bag of meat. It is a baby. This needs to be called out for what it is, which is the mass killing of babies. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Madam Speaker. Minority Leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Hopefully for the last time today, I'm sure, I would rise to speak briefly. I normally take some notes. I do a little bit of research. I do these things before I say things. I know what the emerging sector energy Spyder ETF is. I didn't really do that today because abortion, I feel unqualified, I think, sometimes. I feel very qualified to debate in this room energy policy, environmental policy, taxes, crime. But this is an issue that I think has more to do with your conception of your soul, your conception of how you find moral bearing. And I'm not qualified to pass judgment upon anyone as to how they find their own moral bearing in life. I would say this. I think, and I hope, not just in this room, but across this country, as the Supreme Court wrestles with these issues and we discuss perhaps changing or modifying things that were put in place 50-odd years ago now. I remember in law school reading the Roe versus Wade decision, having a significant amount of debate about it. I think most legal scholars, even those who would view themselves as pro-choice, would suggest to you that Justice Harry Blackmun didn't exactly write a model of legal clarity or intelligent jurisprudence in the Roe versus Wade decision. He kind of made some things up here and there to get the result that he wanted to, and perhaps that result is approved by the majority of Marylanders and the majority of Americans 50 years on. But I think we're missing opportunities, and I think we missed one the other day. We're missing opportunities to move from the extremes and the absolutes on an issue which shouldn't be extremist and absolutist. There are those who would suggest that if I do not set myself on fire, basically, to try to stop this debate from happening today in this chamber in defense of a pro-life position, I am not doing enough. You can never do enough. That abortion must be outlawed, banned, pilloried in all circumstances, for all people, at all times, for any reason. I can't do that. I can't say that. There are those on the farthest extreme to the other edge that say, as my friend from St. Mary's County just indicated, that abortion must be allowed under any circumstance for anyone at any time and paid for by the taxpayer. You're 9 months pregnant, you're a week out from your due date, you decide you want to get an abortion, or someone says maybe you should do this, you can have the ability to do it. I'm not saying that it happens frequently, but would you have the illegal ability to do it? I don't think you should. I don't think you should. And so we're caught in this maelstrom between these two poles of these positions that don't make a lot of sense. And the reason why I oppose this bill is because Maryland has gone too far. We talk about being a state of middle temperament, being a state of moderation. But on this issue, we've gone too far. We've gone too far in the past, and this bill, taken for the reasons that it's presented here today, continues us on that path. It's a path that the majority of people, if you really ask them that question, we had an amendment offered on the floor on this bill the other day that said, look, we will essentially prohibit this after 24 weeks. 24 weeks, to the best of my math, is 6 months. I was blessed in life to have 2 children. I remember my partner at both of those stages at 6 months. And that was a child. That was a baby. It was my child. I would have fought and done anything to protect that child. At a point in time in my life, my partner also had a miscarriage at about a month, perhaps 2 months of being pregnant, and that was very, very difficult for her in particular. It was difficult for me too, but I didn't view it the same way. I didn't. I'll just be honest about it. I didn't have that emotional attachment at that point in time. But at 6 months, if you don't have that emotional attachment, if you can't recognize legally and ethically that there's a difference and that things should be prohibited, that's not fair. That's not rational. I can't make a moral judgment as to those who don't view it that way, because that's not my role in life, and I feel very unqualified to do it. But I think we missed an opportunity in Maryland this year to come more toward the middle, to walk out to our constituents and say, hey, do you want to ban abortion in all circumstances, under all ways? No. We know that's not the majority will of the people of the state of Maryland. Would you like to prohibit it or limit it or change it in these certain circumstances? Late-term abortions? Would you like to limit taxpayer funding of abortion? Would you like to treat it from a regulatory standpoint, from an insurance standpoint, the same way that we treat childbirth? I really appreciate the comments of the floor leader, my friend from Montgomery County, and I believe her when she said she'd like to work in future years to help make co-pays and regulatory and financial hurdles to pregnancy and childbirth go away or be lessened the way that we're making them for abortion in this bill. But if we can do it, we should do it, because we're sending a message to people that abortion is something that the state will pay for, is something that the taxpayer will fund, is something that the insurance company must do. But if you make that election and that decision to go through with perhaps a troubled pregnancy from a medical standpoint, perhaps a troubled pregnancy from a financial standpoint, you're not in a stable situation in your life, it's going to be a burden to proceed with that pregnancy and have that child, whether you choose to raise it on your own or offer it for adoption. If you choose to do that, you're going to have even more financial hurdles ahead of you. And that doesn't make sense either. I'm not qualified for each one of the 140 of you to suggest what's in your hearts and your souls on this issue. But I think we missed that opportunity to do better on the bill. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Madam Speaker.
Madam Speaker.
Madam Speaker.
Gentlelady from Montgomery.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I want to correct the record for a moment, please. First and foremost, Justice Blackmun, when he wrote Roe versus Wade, expressed the difficulty of this issue. He did not make things up. There are legal scholars who disagree with it, but I want to be very clear that he did not make things up. Second of all, a statement was made on the floor that this bill allows abortion at any time, anywhere, by anyone. That is incorrect. That is not what this bill does. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Gentlelady from Carroll.
Thank you. That was a great segue. In front of us, we have Access to Abortion Care and Health Insurance Act, House Bill 937. And I really think it's important to really know what the bill does. So I've tried to break it down from what's in the bill. Number one, what does this bill do? It mandates insurance coverage of abortion care services without any deductible, co-insurance, co-payment, or any other cost-sharing requirement, and requires the taxpayer-funded Maryland Health Exchange to cover 100% of the cost of the premium for young adults who have a 0% expected contribution. I guess I just asked myself, how much will it cost that same mother who chooses life for her child? That's a question that the minority leader just asked. Also, we must provide information to consumers about abortion care. Coverage using the terminology abortion care to describe coverage. That's mandated in this bill. What exactly abortion has to do with abortion care? It's sort of an oxymoron to me. Certainly not care for the unborn baby. There's no mention of speaking about options available to the mother to support pregnancy or adoption or how to pay for either of those things. And hopefully that will come. Number two, it sets up a new program and fund called Abortion Care. Again, care. I'm not sure how care happens with abortions with a fetus, or a baby. And clinical training program. Will train many other providers other than the currently required physicians. Currently in law, we require physicians to take care of this procedure. It also describes who will be authorized to provide abortions. I will not get into all the details, but many, many, many types of providers will now be able to provide abortions other than physicians. It allows a qualified provider to provide an abortion on a minor without notice to a parent or guardian of a minor with very broad discretions. It requires an annual appropriation of $3.5 million of taxpayer dollars every year to fund this program for the clinical training program. This is in addition to the Medicaid funding that we already have in the budget to pay for Medicaid abortions. We ask, how do we currently support pregnancy and delivery of a baby? Very costly, high copays and deductibles, many up to $5,000 and $6,000 for many of our constituents to have a child. I just had 2 new grandchildren in the last month. My one child paid $5,000 because that's his deductible, and my lucky Montgomery County school teacher daughter paid $0. Well, it's very difficult for the one that had to pay the $5,000, but we don't talk about that. A regular birth in a hospital costs around $20,000. How does the state of Maryland support a mother giving birth and choosing life for their child? Maryland is only one of 4 states forcing taxpayers to fund abortion. This is wrong. No public funding should be for abortions. I always ask, I'm famous for asking the question, what is the problem we're trying to solve? And we say it's access. We want to have access unfettered. There may be a problem if the Supreme Court changes. That'll be the next bill. I'm going to tell you that's not accurate. But Maryland is currently ranked 3rd in the nation for abortion access and availability. Abortion is legal and widely available up to 24 weeks in Maryland for any reason. After 24 weeks, the mental health reason kicks in. So, you say, why do we need this bill? To expand even more access when we're already 3rd in the nation. Not a number I'm proud of at all. I'd rather be 3rd in the nation. I guess we're trying to be number 1, but that is certainly not a goal of mine. The crux of the 2 bills in front of us today regarding increasing unfettered access to abortion from conception to live birth and is how we're going to cast our vote on this today. That's what it's all about. And it's really about a fundamental foundational principle that we all need to remind ourselves of. I think most of us all believe that life is the center and soul of the moral truths upon which our nation's guiding light and philosophy has been founded. And it even strikes me more as I watch what's going on in the Ukraine, where an immoral leader is slaughtering thousands of people. But in this country, life is important. The 10 Commandments, as found in the Bible, are the basis for our U.S. Constitution and the laws of this great nation. Think about it. One of those commandments is, thou shalt not kill. That certainly extends to the unborn child growing in the womb of their mother. Each generation must invest and grow what has been inherited for the future. The greatest investment we can ever make in the future for future generations is ensuring that there is a future generation. You heard the statistics yesterday. They're overwhelming when you really look at the numbers. How many lives have been lost to this process? The choices we make here in this chamber and where we prioritize the spending of taxpayers' hard-earned dollars indicates our morals and values, how we set our priorities. Maryland already has one of the highest rates of abortion in the country, and there is no lack or risk of access to abortion. I say it's not a statistic that we should be proud of. As a society, we're broken when a response to any pregnancy is fear rather than joy, and protecting a mother's reproductive freedoms trump any consideration for the unborn child. And the word reproductive freedom and equality is sort of That really bugs me, the name of the next bill that's coming up, because it never talks about the child, and very little talk on the floor the other day was about the child, the unborn child that can't speak. The bills before us today, both House Bill 937
Can you
and...
just stick with 937, please?
I'm just saying, both of them will enshrine unfettered access to abortion at any stage of pregnancy and focuses on the increasing access to the death of an unborn child rather than focusing on protecting the life of the innocent. Is this really the priority of the body? Where's the support for the mothers who are choosing life for their child? Our efforts should be focusing on doing the right thing, and let's just invest in life by supporting mothers. Prioritize the state's interest in the sanctity of human life and restore to all people, born and preborn, our natural and constitutional rights to liberty, life, freedom, and freedom of speech and religion. In my opinion, these unborn babies and the children they grow into are gifts from God. On one hand, we try to protect children once they're born from every imaginable injury, including riding without a helmet on a pony, which I appreciate, after they're born. But we're very cavalier and focused on only the reproductive rights of the mother versus the unborn child who has no voice. This is so tough for me to rationalize, and I think for any clear-minded person. I wanted to finish up by something that came in my inbox yesterday from the desk of Dr. Ben Carson. Dr. Ben Carson is someone I've known for over 25 years, and he's a personal hero to me. He is definitely a supporter of life. We all know him here in this state and are proud of him. He writes, "I feel like our culture has forgotten or ignored some of the very important and basic lessons when it comes to the development of human life. Our society has been infected by an anti-life ideology, treating its most vulnerable members as disposable objects. Abortion that once was thought as a last resort in a medical emergency has become the new normal. Medicine tells us that life begins at the moment of conception. It also tells us when an unborn baby develops a heartbeat, brain waves, and a nervous system. Yet despite all this, the unborn are not treated as though they're alive or even human. As a surgeon, I've operated on infants pre-birth. I can assure you that they're very much alive. Life is a precious gift that has been given to us from our Creator. No person is disposable, and every life is precious according to Him. I believe that everyone deserves life, even those who have been denied this right by our society. And I believe that together we can make a difference and bring dignity and a voice to the unborn. I also believe that I'm not alone in this belief, and I believe that you believe too. The first step is clearly stating what we believe and what we're willing to do to protect the lives of the unborn." And he says, "Will you join me today and stand for those who cannot stand for themselves?" Today, I think will go down in the history books. Certainly, I will remember this day. What side of history do you want to be on? Please reject these harsh bills that move Maryland in the wrong direction. It keeps the status quo. It's not like we're moving anything, I don't think, in the right direction. We're just not going further in the wrong direction. And please vote no, and let's have a conversation about moving us in the right direction. Thank you.
Gentlelady from Baltimore County.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I wholeheartedly agree with the good delegate from Carroll County. And to take it to the next step, we have to ask ourselves, when does life begin? When is the baby in the mother's womb entitled to personhood and protections? Is it at viability, which we think roughly 24 weeks, 6 months? Is it when a mom and dad hear that heartbeat? Or is not until the baby is born and outside the mother's womb? This bill denies science and denies common sense by establishing in a law that a baby is not human, not a life, until he or she passes through the birth canal or is delivered by C-section. As if at that moment, when the baby is born, he or she is a life, yet merely seconds before, he or she is nothing. It is hard to imagine this in 2022. Imagine a fetus, a baby, being considered as nothing as you think about that awesome 3D sonogram that you've seen that maybe you've had, that might be posted on your refrigerator at home, that you've seen certainly on social media. Imagine the mother at 40 weeks or 38 weeks, and a woman decides she's stressed out. I mean, what woman at 38 or 40 weeks isn't stressed out? She's worried about having this child. And a physician, or after this bill passes, even a PA, agrees to abort this baby. That's the reason. The woman's mental health. Mental health without an evaluation by a mental health professional, or even a referral. But the physician who's going to perform the abortion says it's mental health. And imagine this even in the 3rd trimester. And you might say, oh, that doesn't happen. But some of the statistics that we have, sorry about this mask, is terrible, come from the report the Appropriations Committee heard earlier this week from the Department of Health. And we talked about reporting. Medicaid, federal law requires that Medicaid paid abortions get reported by reason. So last year, there were 10,163 Medicaid abortions. The number of abortions that were performed for the life of the mother, that was 0. The number of abortions performed because of rape or incest, that was 2. The number of abortions that were performed because there was fair medical certainty that the fetus is affected by a genetic defect or serious deformity or abnormality, that was 20. The number of abortions that were performed because the pregnancy could have serious and adverse effects on the woman's present or future physical health, that was 530. The remainder, 9,611 abortions last year performed by Medicaid were, quote, continuation of the pregnancy is creating a serious effect on the woman's mental health. So we all need a full understanding and full knowledge of what this bill does. And the good delegate from Carroll County gave you some of those particulars. We have a responsibility to know that and to read the bills. And I'm contending to you today that it's a baby inside the mom. This baby is a fetus, it's healthy, it's dreaming, he's sucking his thumb, she feels pain. She has every finger and toe, she has hair. He is 7.5 pounds and can survive outside the womb, or even 4 pounds and survives easily in the NICU. Under current law, a woman who is carrying a full-term baby, an 8.5-pound girl, can go to a clinic in Bethesda where they advertise, quote, late-term abortions Bethesda, and abort or end that life. A healthy 8-pound baby boy who has no abnormalities, that life can be snuffed out through a gruesome and brutal procedure. Killing a full-term baby in the womb is barbaric, and it's hard to believe that a civilized society would condone that. 2nd trimester abortions, the fetus is cut apart with a knife and sucked out of the woman. Science has proven unequivocally that unborn babies feel pain. In late-term abortions, the baby is given a lethal injection by jabbing a painful needle into the baby's chest through skin and bone, and then injecting them with a deadly chemical that ends their life. While it is very hard to say these things, and it is very hard for you to hear them, this is the truth. This is why 81% of Americans oppose abortion in the 3rd trimester. This is radical. This is current law, and this is current practice in Maryland. This bill before you, House Bill 937, it's going to expand late-term abortions. It's going to increase the number of late-term abortions. It's going to increase the number of late-term abortion facilities. And it's going to add a lot more public funding to late-term abortions. This bill will even allow abortion for sex selection. Today in Maryland and tomorrow, if the Supreme Court returns abortion laws to the state's authority, Maryland already has some of the most liberal abortion laws in place. We do not need this bill. This is not women's health. This bill completely strips a section of human beings, preborn babies, of all dignity and human rights. This bill is radical and drastic and completely unneeded. I hope you will join me in voting no on this bill.
Madam Speaker.
Gentlelady from Prince George's County.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I was listening to the conversation, and the story that isn't being told is one of choice. The story that isn't being told is that when a woman is making a choice, it's not easy. And I was thinking about all the decisions and things in my own life that led me here on this floor. And they weren't easy, and they were hard. And at my ripe young age of 33, I know I will have more choices to go as a young woman and a black woman in this society. And what this bill is about is choice. And if you don't have access to health care, you do not have a choice. This bill is bringing access to Marylanders. And Marylanders want access to good quality health care. And that's why I'm voting green on this bill, Madam Speaker. Removing barriers to care is important. If you have a barrier to gaining the type of health care you need, then you have no health care at all. If you need to make a tough choice, a choice that's your private and your own choice, not someone else's moral code or opinion, your own choice for you and your family, you need access to do that. I'm proud of the Health and Government Operations Committee. I'm proud of the sponsor of this bill, and I'm proud of the members of this chamber that are going to support this legislation, because it takes courage to give the women of Maryland an actual choice. And I will tell you, from my district, Madam Speaker, one of the most diverse, biggest immigrant population, low income, working class. The women of my district, they need a choice. They need access to care. They need HB 937. And I encourage each of my colleagues to have courage for women for every corner in Maryland. Vote green, because a vote for this bill is a vote for access, and there is no choice. Again, there is no choice without access to care. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker.
Gentleman from
Anne
Anne Arundel.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. This bill is really about two choices: life or death. And I presented this a little bit to Ways and Means yesterday, and I think we all need a little perspective. And I'm going to repeat it again. Every single person sitting in this chamber right now, getting ready to make a decision on this, is an undeniable miracle. This is not me speaking morally. This is not spiritual. It is a scientific and mathematical fact. You are a miracle, a 1 in 400 trillion chance. That's just between your mother and your father. I know we throw around millions and billions and trillions around here, and sometimes it gets confusing. So I'm going to give you a little illustration of the difference. 1 million seconds ago was 13 days ago. 1 billion seconds ago was 31 years ago. 1 trillion seconds ago was 31,688 years ago. If you were to try to count to 400 trillion, it would take you 13 million years. So you being here, you have a purpose. You're a miracle. the odds of you being here. I don't think that sets in on people sometimes. You being exactly you is a miracle. 1 in 400 trillion is the same as winning the $100 million lottery 10 times in your lifetime. You would say that's impossible, and you're right. Everybody in here is an impossibility. And your life means something, you have purpose. And when we vote on bills like this, to stomp out another miracle, we really have to weigh that heavy. I'm not trying to cast, it's not my job to judge you, it really isn't. But if I can impress upon you how important your life is, and life in general is, think about it. Not only are you stomping out that life, you're stomping out future generations. And it's important, because everybody's got a purpose, and you have no idea what the purpose of that unborn child might be. That unborn child might be the one that changes the world forever. It may be the MLK Jr. It may be the Barack Obama, like was brought up the other day. So I want you to think about that. I don't want to get in the technical part of this. I don't want to get into the morality of it. Just think about how important every single life is, and the life that we're making a decision on can't make its own decision on bills like this. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Gentleman from Hartford.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. And first, I want to thank the members of this body for the respectful debate. I know we disagree. I know we see things very differently on this, but I haven't felt shamed or attacked or silenced in my opinion, and I'm certainly grateful for that. So thank you for the members of this body for that. Most of you know me. I have a unique story for the most part. You also know I'm not very educated. Some people will question my intelligence. But what I do have is a great deal of life experience. And because of my lack of education, the only thing I can do in this body is draw upon that and try to submit my experience to this body to try to influence legislation. You also hear arguments a lot of times that, and we haven't heard it this week, and I'm grateful for that, that only women can weigh in on this and men don't have an opinion. And maybe that's true, maybe that's not. But abortion affects much more than women. It affects the individuals that were aborted, right? Men, women, black, white, gay, straight. The actual abortion doesn't discriminate. And I stand here before you as an unwanted pregnancy. As an unwanted pregnancy, right? And those of you who say, well, you can't prove that. Well, my parents abandoned me 2 years later, so there's some pretty good evidence that I was unwanted, right? And believe it or not, my mom's still alive. She's still alive. She lives not too terribly far from here. She actually follows me on Facebook. I don't really have any use for her. I don't really talk to her. I hope she's watching this. But she didn't want me. My grandmother, who ended up taking me until she died when she was 12, when I was 12, and then went into foster care, is the reason that and lack of easy access to abortion is the only reason I'm here today. It's the only reason my kids are here today. It's the only reason I have the opportunity to stand up for those who will never have the opportunity to do so for themselves. You know, and we talk about a lot that maybe I'm the example of why, you know, I'm the example of why we should have easy access to abortions, because we don't want these unwanted children to grow up in poverty and have a terrible life and not to have opportunity. Well, first and foremost, I'm grateful I had any opportunity. I'm grateful I have any opportunity at all. I'd rather have bad opportunity than no opportunity. And there's a lot of people in this room who turn very bad opportunity into being members of this body, right? So it's about choice. and I was given the opportunity to have a choice. You also hear arguments about forced to be pregnant, right? I talked to my wife about this. I talked to many women, and there's a lot of people who feel that it's an honor to be pregnant. Me and my wife had a very, very hard time having kids, and a very, very difficult time. Went through a lot. I don't want to go through the whole sordid mess. But we found out in our experience what an absolute blessing and what a rare scientific miracle that being able to be pregnant and have a kid is. And there's lots of folks out there who never get the opportunity. But there's lots of other things that the government forces us to do, right? And if you say forced to be pregnant, I believe that devalues what being pregnant is, right? Continuing the species, continuing and growing and improving upon the human race. So it's not a matter of being forced, it's being given the opportunity. We vote on a lot of things here that are quote unquote forcing people to do things. We just voted on a bill to force people to register their guns in FFL. We voted on tax increases that forces people to take a portion of their livelihood and give it to government. So there's a lot of things that are forced here. I also hear that abortion is a right. I listened to the Supreme Court case, the Mississippi Supreme Court case, and Judge Clarence Thomas made a very interesting argument. He asked the people, the plaintiffs, he asked them, where in the Bill of Rights is abortion written? It's nowhere. They tried to extrapolate it from the 14th Amendment, but they couldn't tell you exactly where it was. What that makes it abortion. Abortion is a court ruling. Now, I know we had argument previously in this body that we don't codify court rulings, but that's what we're doing here, and it's already codified, but now we're expanding a court ruling to eliminate easy access. So I don't want to opine too much, but the moral of the story is of what I'm trying to explain. I've had a difficult life, right? Those of you who know me know that. I don't complain about it. I'm grateful for it, right? You know, I have the pain and the joy of having a severely autistic child. I've had the pain and the joy of being homeless twice. I had the pain and the joy of being a foster kid. I've had the pain and the joy of watching my family die around me. I had the pain and the joy of being abandoned too. And to say that I should have been aborted because I was unwanted is not only cynical, it's wrong, because now I have the ability to tell you and to thank my mom for giving me the opportunity to succeed or fail, because she did not snuff out the sum of my opportunity. And we talk about opportunity a lot. We talk opportunity a lot in this body. To snuff out the entirety of one's opportunity before they even have a chance. That's not liberty, and that's not justice. I know we're not debating the morals of abortion here, but at the very least, we should vote no on this bill to prevent unfettered and easy access and late-term abortion and children having abortions without parental consent and being able to have an abortion without an actual psychologist making the determination if they're mature enough to make that life-altering decision. So again, thank you for the debate. Thank you for the opportunity. Thank you, Madam Speaker, for managing this debate. And I urge a no vote on behalf of choice and opportunity.
Madam Speaker.
Gentleman from Montgomery.
Madam Speaker.
Montgomery.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Speaker. Those that know me know that I have a 13-year-old and I have a 14-year-old. I have a 14-year-old daughter and I have a 13-year-old son. And of those of you who are parents, those of you that are human beings, those that you have relationships, you know one thing. the one thing we all know is we don't really know. We don't really know anything. What do we really, really know for sure? I will tell you what I really, really know for sure. I don't know. I don't know. And because I don't know, I don't feel that I have the right to tell somebody else what they can and cannot do with their bodies. It's none of my business. And this message is not only important for my daughter, but my God, it's important for my son to understand too. It's important for my son to understand. It's important for my daughter to understand. So I will say one last time, the one thing that I do know is I don't know. And so I'm not going to stand up here and tell somebody else what they can and can't do for themselves. What they can and can't do when it comes to their own rights and their own body. That's why I'm voting for this bill and the subsequent bill. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker.
Gentleman from Frederick.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. In that light, I would urge the body to gently consider that even if you are not certain, that logically then would give you the reason to at least abstain and not support this. Because therefore, if you're not sure, there's a possibility at least that exists under the rules of logic that you could be wrong to pass this bill. So it then mandates that you abstain, that you do not support this act. And I want to tell you that one of the things that stood out to me, not only in the consideration like I shared before, my own child, but the fact that this bill will become one of the first in the nation to mandate abortion training in our state with our tax dollars. And we all know that other than California, this is not something that's being done in America. And we all know that America does not support taxpayer-funded abortions or training for the same. There's over 80% of the people that say no. If you're going to be a choice, don't force others who disagree with you to pay for it. That's the side of history that this body should stand with, because that's the side of truth. So I would urge a red vote for that. Thank you.
And a lady from Carroll.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And colleagues, I rise today because I simply must. I must speak out for the unborn. I must speak out for the mothers. I really appreciate my colleague from Hartford and him sharing his story, which I know well. I too am an unplanned pregnancy. I had the pleasure of meeting my birth mother and thanking her for making the very hard choice. Living in a small town, my birth father abandoned her with 2 small boys. She was faced with no resources and had a very difficult choice to make. But she made the right choice, according to my family and my 4 children. They're glad I'm here. My adoptive parents, my mom and dad, were certainly glad and thrilled to be able to add a baby to their household, their dream. They were not able to have children. And so I have to speak out for all of the families out there who would love to adopt a baby. We talk about this taxpayer money to expand access. And my good friend, my delegate friend from Carroll mentioned, the research shows that Maryland is rated in the top 3 in the nation for access. I did just a quick Google search. Planned Parenthood, I think we heard during debate, the rural areas don't have access. In Maryland alone, we have access in Annapolis, Baltimore City, Easton, Frederick, Gaithersburg, Owings Mills, Prince George's County, Towson, Waldorf. When you talk about the rural areas, Cumberland, our good friend, the minority leader, can tell you how rural it is in that area. We have to stand up for those who can't stand up for themselves. Was it easy for my birth mother? No. Sometimes things in life are hard. But we have to do the right thing for the right reasons. And erring on the side of life is always the right decision, in my opinion. So I have to stand up for these unborn babies, for the other unwanted pregnancies. Because as my other good friend from Anne Arundel mentioned, we all have a purpose. We're not mistakes. So I just need you all to think about that. And I thank you for your time, and I hope that you will vote no. Thank you.
Gentlelady from Baltimore City.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. So lots of discussion about this highly personal debate, and I appreciate it. And I am under no illusion that standing on this bill will necessarily change anyone's mind, but I won't be here much longer. And I feel the need this one time to share why this bill is so important to me personally, and as a Planned Parenthood alumni and NARAL alumni also need to rise. So I rise for two reasons. First, to say thank you. Thank you to the women and the men who came before me, who recognized my right to choose my own health care, to consult with my own doctor about my own body. It would never have occurred to me when I was growing up that in 2022, I would need to be fearful that my daughter would have fewer rights over her body than I've had over mine. Like many of you in my generation, I watched Dirty Dancing a lot in high school. And it seemed so long ago back then, so long ago. Unbelievable to me that a woman would be forced to seek healthcare services in a back alley and almost die from it. It just felt unfathomable. And yet, we might find ourselves there again at some point soon in this country. My second reason for rising is to discuss pregnancy as a choice. I found myself in a healthcare suite at my college one night in the fall of 1998, terrified and in pain after being raped by my classmate. I can picture the bed, I can see the suite, I can remember the showers that I took trying to rub everything off that had happened to me. But all I could think about, and I still remember it, is what I would do if I were pregnant. I didn't know. I didn't know what I would do. I was raised Catholic, I was pro-choice, but I wasn't sure personally what decision I would make. And I didn't know if I was pregnant. But I did know, as I laid in that bed, that the choice was mine. What happened to my body that night was not my choice. But the choice of what was going to happen to my body in the future was my choice. It was not the choice of my rapist. It was not the choice of my parents. It was my choice. I am grateful, so grateful to the women and the leaders who came before me to make sure that I had that choice. And I'm grateful to the people and the women and the men leaders here today who want to make sure that every woman in Maryland has that choice. Not just the women who can afford it, but all of us. Women in this state, no matter their outcome, their income, deserve that same choice, that right. It can be a blessing to be pregnant. It is a blessing when you choose to be pregnant. I have two wonderful children who I chose to have at the time that was right for me and my husband. I'm grateful to live in a state that respects my humanity enough to recognize that I should have a choice over my healthcare decisions, whether I can afford it or not. And I encourage the body to vote for HB 937. Thank you.
Madam Speaker.
The gentleman from Washington County.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. House Bill 937 would give someone the impression that abortion services in the state are in decline. The facts wholeheartedly indicate otherwise. When you look at the data from 2017 through 2021, the number of Medicaid-funded abortions in Maryland has steadily increased from 8,892 in 2017 to 10,163 in 2021, an increase of 1,271 abortions, or 14%. In addition, the Medicaid abortion reimbursement has increased from $5.9 million to $6.8 million, an increase of 900,000 or 16% over that same time period. These are just Medicaid-funded abortions in Maryland. We have no idea what the total number of abortions performed in this state in Maryland are, because Maryland does not require, nor does it report these numbers to the CDC, as we discussed on Wednesday. In addition to direct abortion funding, another $10.1 million is provided in fiscal year 22 to the Maryland Department of Health for family planning or birth control. And that was an increase of $456,000 over the prior year. The American Association of Pro-Life Obstetricians and Gynecologists testified on this bill in committee, and I think it's important to share some of that testimony on this floor. In their testimony on House Bill 937, they stated, "Pregnancy is not a disease, and abortion is not health care. Elective abortion carries no maternal benefit and ends the life of a preborn human being." The organization goes on to state that hundreds of studies and years of data collection show that abortive procedures carry several harmful effects for women, and the effects of abortion are harmful to women throughout their lifespan. The association further quotes several studies that indicate for all pregnancy outcomes in all age groups under 40, mortality rates for women were highest after termination of pregnancy. The Institute of Medicine lists induced abortion as a risk factor in subsequent preterm births, proven by more than 160 studies over 50 years, increasing a woman's risk of preterm birth in future pregnancies by approximately 35% after one abortion and 90% after 2 abortions. Consequently, they go on to say that mothers who deliver preterm are at a higher risk of medical complications later in life, including cardiovascular disease and stroke. The association further states that there's a direct relationship between abortions and increased risk of mental health complication, citing 75 studies conducted between 1993 and 2018. Abortion significantly increases the risk for depression, anxiety, substance abuse, and suicidal behavior. In one study, 67% of women said they received no counseling prior to the procedure. 64% said they felt pressured to have the abortion, and 54% were unsure about their decision at the time. The estimates are that at least 260,000 new cases nationwide of mental health problems are being created each year as a result of abortion. The facts show that House Bill 937 has very little to do about women's health, but seems more intent on expanding a billion-dollar abortion industry. May God help us all. Thank you.
Madam Speaker.
Gentlelady from Montgomery.
From Montgomery?
Yes.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I just wanted to correct the record on a couple of things I heard so that we all are dealing with the same facts. There's actually 16 states that have Medicaid funding for abortion. I also just want to correct the record. We don't kill full-term healthy babies here in the state of Maryland. It is absolutely against the standard of care. It does not happen. Otherwise, I just want to rise in support of this bill. I believe very strongly that this bill helps people. It helps anybody who can get pregnant and anybody who loves someone who can get pregnant. It helps transgender people, non-binary people. It helps men. I see them and I love them. But I want to take a minute specifically to talk about how this bill helps women. This helps women by ensuring they can get the health care they need in their local community from providers they know and trust. It helps women by making sure that care is affordable, either through insurance or through Medicaid, because low-income women and middle-income women should have the same right to make their own choices about their reproductive lives as rich women do. It helps women who have decided, using their own moral decision-making, they cannot carry their pregnancy to term. It helps women like Myra. We know that Maryland has no mandatory waiting period for abortion care, but we do have a de facto waiting period because of insurance deductibles. This is what impacted Myra. That's why she had to wait for 3 pay periods to save up enough money to cover the cost of her abortion. 75% of women who need abortion care are low-income women. It helps women like Allie, women who are moms. Without her insurance coverage, Allie said that she would have to use the little bit of cash she had saved all year for Christmas gifts for her 2 kids to cover the cost of her abortion care. 60% of women who need abortion care are moms. And moms, as we know and we have discussed, already struggle in this society. Only 25% of moms have paid maternity leave. And even under Maryland law today, I wrote this law, almost a quarter of the workforce still can get fired for taking unpaid time off to recover from pregnancy and childbirth. So we can fix that. We could do that this year too. This bill helps women with a wide range of health conditions that can be incompatible with pregnancy, from cancer to kidney disease to mental health conditions, which really matter. It helps women like Layla with unexpected pregnancy complications that endanger their own health and lives. It helps women like my friend Julie, who had a heartbreaking loss of a planned and wanted pregnancy after she learned the fetus she was growing to love was going to die. We should stop stigmatizing and shaming women for needing abortion care. 25% of women will have an abortion. Everyone in this room knows and loves a woman who has had an abortion. We have heard from countless medical professionals that this bill will help their patients. It helps women who have been raped. It helps women who have experienced domestic violence and women who have been trafficked. More than 40 different women's groups have come together to tell us this bill will help women. It helps women of all races and religions from across the state. This bill is for all of these women because pregnant women are still people. Becoming pregnant does not take away any woman's ability to conduct moral decision-making, and it should not take away her autonomy and freedom as a human being to make the life choices that are right for her, considering her own unique circumstances. This bill is for my mother. When my mother found herself pregnant in high school, she thought long and hard about what decision to make, and she chose adoption. It was a very painful decision for her, but ultimately it was her decision. And she raised her daughters to believe deep in our souls that we have a fundamental right to control our own decisions around pregnancy. This bill is for my daughters, my stepdaughter Jordan, who is 21, and my daughter Maeve, who is 17. Their whole lives are in front of them. They deserve to live out their dreams, whatever they are. They deserve to be able to decide for themselves if, when, and how motherhood fits into those dreams. No matter what the U.S. Supreme Court has to say about it, I urge a green vote for all of our daughters. Thank you.
Clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker.
Recognize the gentleman from Baltimore City.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise to explain my vote. When we as a body last considered this momentous issue 31 years ago, my niece, Rachel, was 6 years old. She is now the mother of 2 wonderful kids, Liv and Ivy. But the issue before us is the same fundamental issue that we faced and the voters then faced 30 years ago. Who decides? Should it be a decision, this momentous decision, should it be a decision that the woman makes in consultation with the people whom she chooses to seek advice from? Or should the state intervene at any stage at a majority of this process, whenever. We reached a balance, as the court did in Roe. We said that prior to viability, this is a decision for the woman to make. And it's very restrictive after that. It is not abortion on demand. The one thing that has changed is our healthcare system. One of the things that I've learned serving on HGO is that our healthcare system today provides far more access to most women, most Marylanders, than it did 30 years ago. What this bill does is try to address that gap so that every woman in this state is treated equally. I once again urge a green vote.
Madam Speaker.
Gentleman from Hartford to explain his vote.
Thank you,
have
Madam
2
Speaker.
minutes.
To explain my vote, it's a sad day in the Maryland General Assembly. It's a sad day for Marylanders. And we've came down here, we knock on doors, and we tell people we're coming down to make the world a safer place. The most dangerous place for any child under the age of 2 is inside his mother's womb. More lives are cut short and destroyed inside his mother's womb. They're safer walking on the streets of Baltimore City after they're born than inside their mother's womb. This bill makes it even more dangerous for children inside their mother's womb, which should be the most sacred place for an infant to be, is inside his mother's womb. Like I said yesterday, if this bill said this was about adoption, you want to know about adoption? Come talk to me. My mother's adopted. My daughter's adopted. My grandson's adopted. My sister's adopted. There's the option. Adoption access is what we need as a world. This is an embarrassment for the state of Maryland. This just, it codifies what Satan wants from us. That's what this does. That's why I'm voting no. Thank you.
I'd like to stand up.
Gentlelady from Montgomery to explain her vote.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I am proud to vote green on this bill today. We look around our country and our world, we see that making access to abortion care more difficult doesn't make it go away. It just makes it less safe. Today, we are saying to the women of Maryland, we care about you, and we are making access more safe, that when someone decides to terminate their pregnancy, they can do so safely in their community with a provider they trust. As I was growing up, my mother always told me that this issue was about whether we view women as moral, ethical beings able to make the right decisions for themselves and their families. I am voting green because I do. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Madam Speaker.
Gentlelady from Prince George's.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, in explaining my vote. I want to first say I appreciate the conversation that we had here this morning on this particular subject matter. Like others, my mom was a single mom. Her pregnancy of me was not planned. My parents were not married at the time. And she made a decision to carry me full term. But she also taught me the importance of what it means to have a choice. And every year my mom makes a donation to Planned Parenthood because she truly does believe that a woman should have that choice. I'm casting a green vote today for my mom and for every other woman who had to make a difficult choice. And I received an email from a constituent, and I just want to read a little bit of it. And she just said, hello, Delegate Williams. I'm writing this email to you in regards to the upcoming hearing. I've never written to a delegate or an elected official before. So I'm not really sure how to frame this email or even if you read these emails. But I wanted you to thank you for you and others of your efforts to uphold the rulings of Roe v. Wade and to maintain a woman's right to make decisions regarding her body and her future. As a woman in Maryland, I am lucky to feel safe in my state with our current elected officials and our recent efforts to protect that right. But right now, outside of our state, there is a war on women, particularly vulnerable women. And though I suppose I don't need to tell you that, since you are the one who gets paid to stay alert about the lasting unfolding politics and protect our rights. But with that said, I fear for my sisters across the country. And we cannot and should not stand for this. And the letter goes on, but that woman who wrote to me, she's a mom, a daughter, a sister, a wife, future human mom, and she even signed it, also a cat mom.
General Lacy,
Thank
2
you.
minutes are out. Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Speaker? Madam Speaker? Oh.
Gentleman from Baltimore County.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise today to explain my vote in opposition to this bill. I'm voting against this bill because I value life. It was said there are a lot of stories that aren't told. I think the stories that, in the most case, are not told in regard to abortion are the stories of the lives that are lost. I'd like to tell a story very briefly about my wife and myself. We struggled for the longest time to get pregnant, over a year really. That was a very lonely, dark time that I hope no one has to experience. We were successful in late 2015, and my son was scheduled to be born in January of 2017. My wife had a bout of what's referred to as preeclampsia, and she was sent to the hospital to be checked on. And Monday they told us that they were going to hold us for 4 weeks. On Tuesday they told us they were going to hold us until Friday, and Wednesday they said, "You're having this baby today." And the point I want to make here is that we're supposed to put laws in place that are not arbitrary. We're supposed to protect people's rights equitably. My son wasn't prepared to be born on that Monday, but the fact that he came on Wednesday was just a chance. The doctor told us it's got to happen. It was not convenient at all to deliver a child 8 weeks early, let me tell you that. It wasn't convenient for him, it wasn't convenient for us, it wasn't convenient for anybody in this world. But his life mattered, and we should apply rules regard to life that apply to everybody equally. And I think it's an injustice to humanity that we define this as health care. What we're doing is we're expanding death. We should do everything we can to make rules that protect life, and that's why I'm voting no today.
The gentleman's time is up.
Madam Speaker? Madam Speaker?
Gentlelady from Anne Arundel.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise to explain my vote because we've talked a lot on this body about what a fetus looks like at 24 weeks. What we haven't talked about is what that family situation looks like. Because at 24 weeks, those parents, they've started considering names. They've probably set a date for a baby shower. They might have even started the nursery, and something has gone horribly wrong with that pregnancy. That is the point where you have to make that decision. And this bill is very important because that decision should be a private decision between those parents and their healthcare providers. And we should provide the broadest access to that care without stigma, without judgment, and allow them the dignity of processing that pregnancy, whether it's a loss, whether it's mourning the baby they thought they were going to have. And we should not stand in the way of delaying their decision-making and or their mourning process. So for that reason, I'm a green vote. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker.
Madam Speaker.
The gentleman from Washington County.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Just to explain my vote, we've heard a lot of debate on this one, but this bill, just reading the bill, it really is just talking about, are we going to give $3.5 million every single year in mandated spending to train abortionists? I heard a fellow colleague say that they like to donate to Planned Parenthood. That's where this money should be going to. If someone wants to support this, then donate to a group like Planned Parenthood. But why are we taking our taxpayer money and funding it to train abortionists? That doesn't make sense. This is an easy no vote. I would encourage my colleagues, please vote no. Let people choose to spend their money how they like. Don't force us all to support this. Thank you.
Gentlelady from Baltimore and Howard County.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, to explain my vote. So everybody who's gotten up today, or almost everybody, has had a story to tell. And I respect that. And it brings me back to where, as a woman of faith who is both pro-choice and pro-life, who believes that every child should be wanted and loved, and appreciates that everyone's situation is unique, and is fortunate to have a relationship with my God where I know my God to be loving and merciful. I want everyone to have the freedom to choose a relationship with their God. And when we talk about this decision that is about a fetus that I have no doubt is a living being, I truly believe that what we are doing here is the right thing, because we are stepping out of the decisions between a person and their God and allowing them to look at their situation and make the best decision that they can for themselves and the child that they carry who requires them to give birth. I don't want to go back to breeding women or forcing them to carry the term or sterilizing them. And because we are providing broader health care, we are also not going back to back alleys and untrained people and shame. And my mother, who will be 90 this year, will be proud that I took this vote. I know that because she, a dozen years ago, did a YouTube video saying that we cannot go back. We cannot go back.
Gentlelady's time is
Thank
up.
you, Madam Speaker.
Madam Speaker.
Gentlelady from Baltimore County.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise to explain my vote as well. No one wants to have an abortion. No one wants to have to terminate a pregnancy. And I have been very, very blessed. I have 3 boys, and I was pregnant with them at a time when it was convenient for me, when I had social supports, a supportive spouse, a supportive family, where I knew that I could feed and take care of them. And then later, where I knew that I could actually deal and had the resources to deal with a lot of their very, very special issues that they ended up having as they grew older. But I have a sister-in-law who shortly before my first child was born also had a child who had serious, serious birth defects. They did not have the choice to decide whether or not to bring that child into the world at that point because they didn't know and it was far too late. The baby was born, and after 3 weeks in the ICU, on tubes, on life support, without parts of its heart, lungs, or a face, they had to pull the life support from that child, and that child died. That time for that baby was miserable. It was torturous for both the baby and for the entire family. So I knew that I had to have amniocentesis. I had to know, because never would I bring a baby into the world under those circumstances. I was lucky. I didn't have to make that choice, but I absolutely would have, and I would have thanked God that I could. And I am also a religious person. After my 3rd child, I was told it was not safe for me to have any other babies. You know, you do everything you can, but sometimes science fails. Had I become pregnant again, I also would have made that choice, and that would have been to protect my own self. I want to say one last thing, and that's because in my advocacy with both women and children, I have held
Gentlelady's
yes,
time
ma'am.
is up.
Thank you so much. I hope we can vote to make this world a better place so that the world is not the most dangerous place for babies.
Okay. Clerk will take the call. There being 89 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 937, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk will read the next bill.
House Bill 1171, Declaration of Rights, Right to Reproductive Liberty.
Is on third reading and final passage. Is there any debate?
Madam
Recognizing the minority whip.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Although I don't act like it sometimes, I'm a Southern Baptist, so you can probably gather from that where I stand on the pro-choice versus pro-life debate. But I think the best summary of where I stand on this issue came from the words of Ronald Reagan. He said, "I've noticed that everyone who is for abortion has already been born." But I want to put on my other hat, my simple country lawyer hat, just for a minute, because there are other practical and legal reasons, in my estimation, to oppose this constitutional amendment. First and foremost, we don't need it. You know, when asked to justify the need for this action to enshrine abortion in the Maryland Constitution, we often get a Chicken Little-esque response. You know, we have to do this because the Supreme Court is about to overturn Roe versus Wade. I hope they do. But even if that happens, the worst thing that will happen from the standpoint of you pro-choice folks in the room is that they'll leave it up to the states to decide for themselves on this particular issue. That's it. That's what will happen. Whatever the court does in the Dobbs case will not overturn the Maryland Freedom of Choice Act of 1991. It just won't. Now, I didn't just fall off the turnip truck, so I know there's a political calculus to this and having marijuana on the ballot this year. I get that. I understand that. But aside from the suspect timing of this, let's talk about the euphemistic language that will be on the ballot. Now, you know, I've gone over the language with a fine-tooth comb. And there's one word that doesn't appear: abortion. Heck, it's not in the title, and it's not in the body of the question. That's odd to me. But other than the fact that the constitutional amendment isn't necessary, and you know, it seems to be driven by raw politics, there is another practical
Madam
consideration.
Speaker, point of order. Thank you. Thank you, Madam
Howard.
Speaker. I wish to point out that we have a rule on this floor that does not allow a member to impugn other people's motives. The first time I let it go. This time it's just a step too far. I would appreciate it if the gentleman would stick to the rules and not impugn the motives of this body.
I'm not impugning motives.
By saying
that's
it's
my
political is impugning the motives. The motive is to do the right thing that we all believe, whatever that is.
Well,
thank you, Madam Speaker.
The people will have to decide that.
Madam Speaker, that's what a constitutional amendment does.
Yes.
It allows the people
Well,
to
the
do
court of
that.
public opinion will
Okay.
have to decide that.
Let's stick with what's before you.
Back to my spiel. A constitutional amendment will undo many laws that are currently in place, even in Maryland, that do protect, even here, life and conscience. Furthermore, it'll handcuff future legislatures to put even modest limits on abortion. But more importantly, it will have a chilling effect on the First Amendment right of Marylanders to speak in support of legislation designed to protect life. Plain and simple. That's what the effect of this proposed constitutional amendment will have. God help us, Madam Speaker, for what we're doing today. Thank you.
Is there any further debate? The gentleman from Frederick.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise in support of my colleague's speech, and in the spirit of the speech I gave about my little boy that was just born, I wanted to give a short speech from God's Word, the Old Testament, Psalm 139, from the baby in the womb. It says this: "Where shall I go from your spirit? Or where shall I flee from your presence? If I ascend to heaven, you're there. If I make my bed in hell, you're there. If I take the wings of the morning and live in the uttermost parts of the sea, even there your hand shall lead me, and your right hand shall hold me. If I say, surely the darkness will cover me, and the light about me is night, even the darkness is not dark to you, O God. The night is as bright as day, for darkness is as light with you. For you formed my inward parts. You knitted me together in my mother's womb. I praise you, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Wonderful are your works. My soul knows it very well. My frame, my body was not hidden from you when I was being made in secret, in the depths being woven. Your eyes saw my unformed substance, and in your book were written, every one of them, the days that were formed for me, when as yet there were none of them. How precious to me are your thoughts, O God. How vast is the sum of them." And I stand in support of all the unborn to say that they have a right to life. We're putting a Declaration of Rights article in saying that they don't have a right to life. But the side of history from God himself, I believe, is that every unborn life matters, including those who are disabled, including those who can't speak for themselves, which is those in the womb. Thank you, Madam Speaker. I urge a red vote.
Lady from Montgomery.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I find myself rising again to correct the record. With all due respect to the country lawyer, everything that he said about what this will do is both legally and constitutionally incorrect. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you.
Madam Speaker.
Gentleman from St. Mary's.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise to maybe correct the record again. I'm looking at this constitutional amendment, and I have to agree with the minority whip. The word abortion is not in this constitutional amendment. And earlier I made the statement of the Bill Clinton quote, "safe, legal, and rare." And now, after today, it would be applied to anyone, anytime, and at taxpayer expense. And I wanted to explain that since it triggered a few people. The anyone would be the qualified person on the other bill. Means physician, nurse, nurse practitioner, nurse midwife, licensed, certified midwife, physician assistant, or any other individual authorized by law. That's close to anyone. And at any time is this piece of legislation. Because if it truly wanted to limit abortions at 24 weeks, It would plainly say it in the constitutional amendment. It does not. And as for the taxpayer expense, that's an easy one. The $3.5 million that should never be used to train abortionists. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Madam Speaker.
Gentleman from Baltimore City.
If I make 2 points regarding the comments by my friend and the minority whip. First, the key phrase in this proposed constitutional amendment is that the state can intervene, can restrict the abortion only if it's furthering a compelling state interest. Well, if ever there's a compelling state interest, it's the First Amendment and free speech. And if I heard my colleague correctly, he indicated that this amendment would inhibit free speech. So that is not the case. I would also say that the basis of the decision in Roe is not from out of nowhere. The basis of the decision is the privacy right, which was first articulated by then Professor Brandeis, future Justice Brandeis. So it is protecting that right and furthering that right at a time when there are now members of the court who believe that we should go further and then strike down Roe, but to enshrine as a constitutional right the right to life of the fetus. So this amendment, this constitutional amendment, is before you in light as well of that real prospect. Thank you.
Young lady from Prince George's.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'm one of, I think, 3 members of this House that was here in 1991. It was my first vote in the legislature. For the first time in nearly 30 years, we are here. In November of 1992, the voters affirmed their overwhelming support of that bill, and it has been current law ever since. In doing this, the voters removed abortion as a political issue in this state. The people have spoken has been all that needed to be said. For more than a generation now, abortion has been a private matter in Maryland. Of course, people in their private conversations and in their own consciences have very differing views on the underlying moral issue about the act of abortion itself. And some still exert their First Amendment rights to push for additional legislation. But the legal status of the procedure has generally faded as a political issue. In light of all of this, I believe that the state should invest in supports and wraparound services for mothers and their children and make it easier to choose life, regardless of whether abortion is easily available or not. I believe that the right to life includes the human right to food, clothing, adequate shelter, health care, education, and economic opportunity, among other things. I believe that Maryland, like most states, falls woefully short in these regards. We do not adequately protect a pregnant woman's right to choose to have the child she carries because we do not provide for her basic human rights. In fact, many women are coerced, threatened, and beaten by people who do not want them to carry their child to term. The so-called right to choose is made a mockery as long as these things are so. My personal views on abortion have not changed over the last 30 years. But I have changed a little bit. I've seen the role of government differently over the 31 years I've been in the legislature. I will not indulge in inflammatory rhetoric on this such serious subject. As an elected official, I represent all the people in my district. I seek the greater good and respect the will of the voters. The more volatile the issue, the more thoughtful I try to be. This does not mean allowing myself to be swayed by organized partisans. It means being in tune with the voters in my district, listening to them, and over the years, year in and year out, learning what they care about and how they feel on a whole range of issues, and taking all of that to heart as I discern what is in the common good. House Bill 1171 is a constitutional amendment. We've heard what it says. It does not expand abortion rights beyond the current law. If it passes, which requires supermajorities in both houses of the General Assembly and ratification by the voters in November of 2022 general elections, it would become law. It would become part of the state constitution. It would be settled law until and unless it is removed by the same process. I am inclined to think that in the current political atmosphere, where partisans on both sides are so extremely divided and there is so much passion, that the greater good should ultimately be decided by the voters themselves. As a practical matter, this measure does not change the current law, which is unlikely to change anyway, as it was ratified by the people more than 30 years ago. And that is the reason why I'm going to support this constitutional amendment. The people have the ultimate decision to make on this, and I think it's right and just to do that.
Gentlelady from Hartford.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise in opposition of this constitutional amendment, and the main reason is because I do believe that it's extremely radical, and it's unspeakable to me to know that with the passage of this and then the passage of the bill that was before us, it does allow for a full-term healthy baby to be aborted. And if that is not bad enough, it also expands and makes the taxpayer dollar pay for that abortion, knowing there are so many people in our state that believe that this is a form of killing the innocent. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Gentleman
Speaker.
from Baltimore County.
Just real quick, I know it's been a long day, and for my colleague from Hartford County, just to touch on what she just said, I have no reason not to believe her if in fact that is true. The idea of enshrining that into our state constitution is something I can obviously not support, and I do think at the end of the day, if the voters had any idea of the details of what the lady from Hartford County just said, there is no way that they would support it either. So thank you, Madam Speaker. I will be voting no.
Gentleman from Hartford.
Madam Speaker, thank you. Yeah, it just amazes me, you know, from growing up, we were taught what a Declaration of Independence was, what the Constitution was, how it was meant to protect human life, to defend people, to keep all people safe, no matter what. This has to be the first time in America's history that we're going to enshrine in a constitution, in our state constitution, basically the right to take and destroy life, to take our God-given right. Because remember, this Constitution was written right over in that building by God-fearing men. That's what it was written by. This one piece of legislation will take that God-given constitutional right and change it into, very simply said, a satanic document. That's what it will be. You can say it any way you want. This document now will be about taking life. I'm not going to support this. I'm not going to support something that when someone goes out in front of an abortion clinic and changes a woman's mind, that is going to be something that that person can be jailed for? Because you know what? 20 years from now, that woman who changed her mind, when she holds her first grandchild, she'll say, that was the best decision that I was ever made. I was glad that that person was out in front of that clinic and helped me to change my mind, to do the right thing, to bring life, to give life. We were all put on this earth to create life, not to take it. I will not be voting for this. Thank you.
As this is a constitutional amendment, 85 votes are needed. Clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker.
Madam Speaker.
Gentleman from Frederick, Washington County.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Just to explain my vote, I think it's completely unnecessary. If Roe v. Wade is overturned in June, which I seriously hope it is, it was a very flawed decision, that won't affect Maryland law. It'll go back to the way that Maryland already had it. And we have one of the most liberal laws in the entire country, actually tied with New York and maybe Virginia now. We don't need this. What this does is makes it much, much more difficult in the future to change the laws as appropriate. As medical science, as we learn more, I would encourage my colleagues to vote no. There's no reason for this bill, unless it's purely political, to turn out people in the elections this coming November. And I don't think it's a good reason to vote for a constitutional amendment. Thank you.
Madam Speaker.
Gentlelady from Hartford.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I
Carol.
rise to remind everyone what a constitutional amendment is. It means this is the new law. Now, we have laws on the books, but someone could go and say, our Constitution now allows this, and there's no limits in this constitutional amendment. So anyone can challenge the laws on the books, because we now, if this passes, and it passes a referendum, we will now have no limits, and someone can take our laws and challenge them. So remember that this is giving us the opportunity to expand what we already have, which I think are very lenient laws. Secondly, I know during our discussion in our committee, we talked about the great chair lady talked about this political decision. And it is not a political decision. I agree with you. But over and over, it was called a political decision. This is a philosophical and moral decision. It is not a political decision. So keep that in mind. Politics, take out of it. I don't care if you're R's or D's or whatever. This is about what you believe, about morals, and that's what it's about. So that's why I cast a red vote, because this constitutional amendment allows for the expansion of our already liberal laws we have on the books. Thank you.
Is there any further debate? Not, the clerk will take the call. There being 93 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 1171, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Gentleman from Talbot.
I've got a vote change on HB 542. I'd like to be recorded in the red.
Madam Speaker.
Gentleman from Harvard.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I have a vote change on HB 71 from yea to nay.
And Madam Speaker, I have a vote change.
Gentlelady from Hartford.
Thank you. On HB 71, yea to nay.
Gentlelady from Hartford.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Vote change from HB 71 from yea to nay. Thank you.
Any other vote changes? Okay. Message from the Senate. Senate bills introduced in the House. The clerk will read the bills and committee assignments.
Senate Bill 59, Senator McCray, Environment and Transportation. Senate Bill 159, Senator Kelly, Health and Government Operations. Senate Bill 461, Senator Griffith, Health and Government Operations. Senate Bill 513, Senator Eckert, Health and Government Operations. By Order Sylvia Seeger, Chief Clerk.
Introduction of House bills during the last 35 days of session. Recognizing the delegate from Baltimore City.
Thank you. I just ask for your consideration of support. I have no good excuse. Please support this suspension. Please. Thank you.
Shall the bill be introduced? It requires 94 votes. Clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker.
Has everyone recorded their vote? If so, the clerk will take the call. There being 121 votes in the affirmative, the bill will be introduced. Clerk will read the bill and the committee assignment.
House Bill 1485, Delegate Wells, House Rules.
Introduction of House bills during the last 35 days of session. Recognizing the gentleman from Hartford.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I would ask for the body's support on this with late-minute discussion and concerns by constituents and the governor. The bill was put in late, so I would hope that you would support voting for this.
Shall the bill be introduced? Requires 95
Madam
votes.
Speaker, on the bill.
Purpose, gentlemen, go
I
ahead.
was just going to ask what the bill did. Thank you for rising there. I was asking what the bill did. Thank you.
The bill has a, can you hear me? Can you hear me now? The bill has an exemption on gasoline tax for a period of time.
Say it again. What does it do?
The
again,
bill
sir?
has an exemption on gasoline tax for a period of time.
How long does it?
Madam Speaker,
Yes.
as a point of order, is it admissible under the rules to debate or even question the contents of a rule? My understanding is we only explain why it's late.
Madam Speaker.
That is correct.
Madam Speaker, there's just a point of order. Maybe the parliamentarian can ask this, because I remember debating several bills on late files. I remember one from former majority leader before dealing with tax incentives and stuff like that. So I think it's completely appropriate to stand and ask exactly what the bill does before we cast a vote whether it should be submitted late. Thank you, Madam Speaker. Any clarification?
Madam Speaker, just briefly, the only thing I would say, I'm not far from an expert in our rules, but the gentleman from Harford County, from what I could hear, indicated that he was bringing the bill forward because he thought it was a matter of importance to his constituents and the governor. I think we have a rough idea of what the bill does. If you stand up and say, I'm bringing the bill forward because my senator screwed up or the dog ate my homework or whatever it is, then I can see not questioning that. But I do think we just have a question as to should we vote on whether or not to allow it to supersede the rules and be brought forth. We at least like some brief explanation of what the bill does from a clarity standpoint. I think that we're elevating form over substance, because then I could simply stand up and say, any bill I want, don't worry about what it does. It does the most heinous things possible in the world from your perspective. Well,
Madam Speaker.
Make things simple.
Parliamentarian.
Speaker, thank you.
addressed each other.
Thank you, colleagues, for all of the input on the House rules. I very much appreciate the consideration. I did take a moment just to review and better understand and think this through, as it is an important decision. However, what is before us is if the bill shall be introduced or not. Given that this is not first reader debate, this is not second reader debate, this is not third reader debate, this is not a debatable point. And the gentleman has provided his reason, and we should take a vote on whether or not this bill shall be introduced. Thank you.
Clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker.
Clerk, take the call. There being 130 votes in the affirmative, the bill will be referred to the appropriate committee. Oh, sorry. Recognizing the gentleman from Harvard. What's that?
Who moves suspended rules to allow the bill to be referred to its appropriate committee?
Question for the House is to refer HB 1486 to its appropriate committee. Clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker.
Has everyone recorded their vote? If so, the clerk will take the call. There being 132 votes in the affirmative, the bill will be referred to the appropriate committee.
House Bill 1486, Delegate Johnson, Ways and Means.
Introduction of bond initiative after the 55th day. This is for delegate from Prince George's.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I just want to say it was either my amazing senator or probably me personally. Thank you, and I hope y'all consider voting to support this. Thank you.
Shall the bond initiative be introduced? Requires 94 votes. Clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker.
Has everyone recorded their vote? If so, the clerk will take the call. There being 135 votes in the affirmative, the bond initiative will be introduced. Clerk will read the bond initiative and the committee assignment.
Introductory House Bond Initiatives number 49, March 5, 2022. Refer to appropriations.
Okay. That ends the work at the desk. Committee announcements, appropriations.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The Appropriations Committee will have a voting session at 2:15. A voting session at 2:15. Scurry across.
The Vice Chair of the Judiciary Committee.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. House Judiciary Committee will not be meeting today, but we will meet Monday afternoon for a vote session and morning 10 a.m. for criminal law. Stay tuned for more information from committee staff. Thank you.
Environment and Transportation.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The Environment and Transportation Committee will continue public hearings at 2:20, and after the public hearings, we will have a voting session.
Ways and Means.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The Ways and Means Committee will have a voting session at 2:15 p.m. Thank you.
Economic Matters.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The House Economic Matters Committee will not be meeting today, but subcommittee chairs will be meeting right after we get off the floor, and we'll be voting on Monday, so please check your email. Thank you.
Health and Government Operations.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. That committee will be meeting for our hearing today at 2:30, and after that, we will have a voting session that I believe follows 15 minutes after the hearing. Thank you.
We will now have a Women's History Month moment. A delegate from Anne Arundel County.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. It is an honor to be asked to speak today on Women's History Month. I am so very grateful for each and every woman who has gone before me to help pave the path. Each woman who has done something first undertook the hardship of laying a brick down for our path to make it easier for the next generation. I am proud to do my part so that all of our daughters one day have endless possibilities. Lydia Taft was the first woman to vote legally in America in 1756. Harriet Tubman was the first woman to lead an armed military operation in the United States in 1863. Susanna Salter was the first woman mayor in America in 1887. Jeanette Rankin was the first woman to serve in Congress in 1917. Mary Eliza Water-Rousseau was the first woman legislator in Maryland in 1921. Nellie Taylor Ross was the first woman governor in America in 1925. Frances Perkins was the first woman member of a presidential cabinet in 1933. Yvonne Burke was the first woman to give birth while serving in Congress in 1973. Mary E. Clark was the first woman to become a major general in the United States Army in 1978. Sandra Day O'Connor was the first woman on the United States Supreme Court in 1981. Madeleine Albright was the first woman Secretary of State in 1997. Condoleezza Rice was the first woman National Security Advisor in 2001. Nancy Pelosi was the first woman Speaker of the House in 2007. Madam Speaker, permission to use the delegate's name.
Permission granted.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker Adrienne Jones became the first woman Speaker of the Maryland House of Delegates in 2019. Kamala Harris became the first woman Vice President of the United States in 2021. Today, it seems almost unbelievable that there are any firsts left for women, but there are many. We still have need of brave, strong, and determined women to step forward into the unknown, into the difficult and the terrifying, to do the things no woman before has ever done. Personally, I truly look forward to seeing the day within my lifetime and my daughter's lifetimes of seeing the first woman governor of Maryland and the first woman president of the United States of America. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Okay. Quorum call before adjournment. Has everyone recorded their presence? The clerk will take the call. There being 133 members present, the House is still in what happened here? What happened? Huh? What is it, right? There being 133 members present, the House is still in session, recognizing the majority leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I move that the House stand adjourned until Monday, March 14th at 6 p.m., Legislative Day, March 6th.
Have a good weekend, everyone.